Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. We'll call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock on this lovely May evening. Could we do the roll call, please?
Councilmember Larson,
Yes.
Councilmember Cassidy,
Yes.
Councilmember Damhon,
Present.
Councilmember Cox, present. Councilmember Stubble. Yes. Councilmember Josh Hahn,
I'm here.
Mayor White.
Also present.
You have a quorum, Madam Mayor.
Great. Thank you. And how lovely to have company here in the chambers. Thank you all for being here. A couple of things. One, if you've got one of these on you, please make sure it's set on silent or buzz so it doesn't cause disturbance during the meeting. Also, if you need to have a conversation with someone, even if it's a whispered conversation, please step out into the hallway and away from the door because the acoustics in here are odd and it drifts in and likewise can be a little challenging. I wanted to start note with a bit of an anecdote. For folks who know me, I am a comfortable clothing kind of gal. Sweatshirt and jeans are my norm. I try to dress a little bit nicer for council meetings, but today I actually wanted to keep this on specifically. A little story and leading into why I think y'all are here. Just recently, a few days ago, I was chatting with one of our staff and he was catching me up on life and saying his daughter finished at junior college and got recruited to go play volleyball at a small university in Kansas City called Avila University. I was like, no kidding. I was on that campus 10 days ago. That's where my nephew goes to college and my brother's a pastor half a mile away at a church there. And so for me, wearing this tonight is my symbol of the power of the Lander community. And I very much believe in this thing that is palpable, but not visible, called the Lander Vortex. And it's because of our community. We are passionate, committed, driven. We help each other out. And I suspect why most folks are here in the audience is because of what's going on, the conversations happening about the pool right now. Is that a fair assumption for folks? Yeah. Awesome. We're so glad you're here. And I know there were calls on social media to attend the meeting and provide public comment. Unfortunately, what was not conveyed is that public comment is not offered at our fourth Tuesday meeting. We do want to move forward as a whole community. And what I'd like to do with having folks here is we can't move forward unless we're starting in the same spot. So I'd like to take a few minutes and explain to folks what's going on. There's a bit more than has been conveyed both on social media and Ms. Gukin, thank you for your article. Appreciate that. I think you covered a lot of great information there, but there's still a bit more detail there. So folks, bear with me. I'd like to give a little bit of background. Please do not in any way think that we don't want to have a conversation. Please get in touch with me, get in touch with any of our council members, school board, school administrators as well. We are having solid conversations together. And I want that to be the first part of what we convey here is that the city and Fremont One continue to have productive, collegial, solution-oriented conversations, including this morning had yet another conversation, myself and Superintendent Harris. So please know that we want to work together. We want recreation in all forms, not just the pool, to continue to be available. And what's going on right now highlights some of the hurdles that we will have both as our respective entities as well as a community. So let me step back and do a little bit big picture. One of the funding challenges for Fremont One is that this calendar year, they have 400 fewer students than they did in the 2019-2020 school year. One of the ways the school district gets funding is an allocation from the state. It's about 16,000, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little bit more. So just trying to keep the math simple, if it's 16,000 times 400 students, that has already put the district $6.4 million behind their budget from not that many years ago. That's a tough one. They've been able to navigate that because until this most recent legislation passed that restricts how a significant portion of their funds can be used, they had the discretion to use it in a variety of ways, and they very graciously did. So the other thing that changed that folks may have heard is this instructional silo funding, which restricts a large pot of money only for a very narrow part of classroom activities. So it doesn't cover paras, bus drivers, custodians, food service, school psychologists, other things where they've had the latitude to shift funds around to meet the unique needs of the district. So between those two things, that is causing a hiccup here. To give you a sense of just how generous the school district has been, they have supplemented the activities and sports by close to 500,000 annually, and the pool anywhere from 375 to low 400,000 every year. That's amazing that they've done that and helping out with that. I know one of the things that has come up for folks and has been part of social media, why did the city stop paying? I was not on council at the time. That was a decision by Mayor Mick Wolf who was presiding at the time. There were budget cuts to the city, and that was one of many areas that the city needed to trim the budget. While that was certainly not a popular decision at the time, I was in Lander at the time. I remember the headlines; they were not popular. Uh, there were appropriate clauses that parties could end the agreement for that. Um, and so since then, that was in 2014 that decision was made. What that partnership was is the Lander Rec Board, which was a Parks and Rec staff and a citizen group, applied to the Lander District Rec Board that gets its funding through property tax. I can't remember how many mills, but property tax within the Fremont one geographic area, and then uh, community different entities can request funding for that. And then the city matched that. So often it was 25,000 from the Lander District Rec Board, and the city likewise committed 25,000 to that. Um, so, and that's one thing, council, we've not had that conversation recently, although I've had informal with all of you, and that was a conversation with Superintendent Harris this morning, that if that's something we would like to amend in our budget before we approve the budget in June, that's certainly something we can pull out 25,000 and get back to contributing that to that. So another question that comes up is, okay, so, but why, if there's funding shortfall, then why did the basketball court get a new floor? How did the AstroTurf go in? There are multiple funding streams for the schools, and one of them is specifically designated towards what they call major enhancements for things like those programs. So it can be used for redoing the basketball floor or doing the AstroTurf, but it can't be used for general operations of the pool. So they're trying to use the funds just like we do. If like when funding's available that can address what we're trying to do, we go after that. So likewise, there have been questions about, well, why did, say, the wayfinding signs go in? Why did the city spend money on that instead of patching potholes with that? Excellent question. It wasn't our money. That funds for that came from the Wyoming Office of Tourism and went actually to Helen Wilson, the director of the Visitors Council. And multiple communities were able to get funding to do the signs, funded by this other opportunity. Uh, Likewise, folks have said, gosh, why is all this infrastructure and money being spent for the entrance into Paposia River Park? Wouldn't that money be better used for fixing the streets? Likewise, that was a grant specifically being able to be used for that. We can't use it and turn it over to pave the streets. So likewise, we have a strategic plan that we as council create, and what city staff are doing is looking for opportunities, be that time or funding, to be able to move those projects forward for the community. And in terms of slowly starting to develop Paposia River Park, that likewise, wanting more park space and opportunities for recreation in local areas was part of the community feedback from the most recent master plan. So trying to help folks understand that unlike your family budget, where you might be saving for a splurge, but then you get a fender bender and you can like, oh, got to pull that money and put it over here. We have more restrictions in terms of what those grant fundings are and how we can do those things. So I hope folks can understand that. So coming back up to this, awesome that Fremont One has been so generous in supporting both activities and sports as well as the pool. I think folks can see from those numbers, that's incredible generous. Again, city's happy to step in and help to some degree with what we can. We also hope that the instructional silo will be undone and go back to giving schools more latitude in how they spend their funding. Uh, the school administration, Mr. Sweeney and Mr. Harris presented to the school board an idea of using yet another of their funding pockets called legacy funding to be able to support food service programs and the pool for they're estimating at least a year, possibly more for that. That's the hope. And we would like to help extend that as it can. Um, so long term for all of our recreation facilities, including city facilities. So the per player field fee, I can't say that fast. Um, we try to keep that really low, and knowing that that doesn't cover the cost of maintaining the fields, doing all the work. It really what gets paid really covers about the amount of the material to mark the fields. It doesn't cover any of the operational costs of that. And we never expect that on any of our parts that we're going to break even on recreation. The question is, how much can our entities support that? Most likely, the way we're going to sustain and build on recreation here in our community really needs to be a community effort. And that is part of why the city has been in conversation. We have some funding from the Lore Foundation to help with this and working with the school district to say, what would this look like? And I know folks have likewise expressed concern about, oh my gosh, why another study? Well, if we're going to turn to the community and ask for specific funding needs, I think it's important that we have a good picture of what those funding needs are and how might we achieve those things. Uh, I mean, you as potential voters for that, I think you would want to know, well, why this dollar amount? How is it going to be used? Those kinds of things, and what are funding sources for that? I would encourage you. There's some good information already for us. The Riverton City did a feasibility study about more of a not including a pool, but open gym space, that kind of facility that's available. Mr. Butterfield is here. That's available on the Riverton website. And I think that came in the construction costs at 12 million and the annual operating costs at 2. Is that accurate? Can you give me a nod in that ballpark, more or less? So, we don't need to recreate that wheel. But looking at what the city residents, you folks asked for in the master plan and the community feedback, we know recreation is important to the community as a whole. We know recreation and sports activities are important to our students in the school system, and it's going to take all of us to crack that nut. So again, so psyched that y'all are here. I know you're passionate and committed about that. I wish right now that I had some kind of like, and here's exactly how to do that. It's early in that process for that. The one thing you can do, well, actually two things. One is let legislators know the impact you're seeing of the instructional silo funding. It's been really helpful to have Representative Larson be part of these conversations. He sees that, he's well aware of that, but it'd be great to educate others as well about that. And then also, if you want to be involved in whatever kinds of outreach, information, community work groups, et cetera, again, we're working with the school district and even is collecting names for that. So if you want to be part of that email call out list, her email is aeven, AEVEN @landerwy.gov. Get in touch with her and let her know that you want to be part of that group, and we'd love to have your participations. Again, this is a big nut to crack. We want these awesome opportunities for our kids of all ages, including all of us here in the room. And being able to have well-rounded recreational opportunities in a small community, it's going to be a lift for all of us. But again, I'm going back to this. I've seen the Lander community rally time after time after time. I have every confidence that we will figure out a way to crack this nut. We're not ready with a plan for what that looks like yet. But again, seeing the number of folks who are here, that gives me total confidence that as we start to develop a plan, we're going to have great minds working on it to develop that plan and continued passion and enthusiasm to make that come to fruition. So I realize I was a little bit long there, but I wanted folks to know uh, we want to have those conversations with you. Also, if you want to take a look at our budget, previous budgets are posted on the webpage. We don't have the coming year because it's not been adopted yet, but it is available in council packets, or get in touch with any of us, myself. We can send that to you. Likewise, folks have questions about how have past funds been spent. Our audits are available online back to 2014. We absolutely welcome prospective questions. Every time I have conversations with folks about our budget, I learn things too. So please continue to be engaged on all levels as much as your lives can allow. We absolutely want that. So we thank you all for being here. I do apologize that the word was out to come for public comment, and public comment is not there. But please know, you don't need to tell us that you're concerned about the pool and you want to see funding continue. We get it. We all believe that same thing as well. We're going to work to figure out how to make that happen. So thank you for indulging me in that, both folks here in the room and council for that. Probably should have done approval of the agenda ahead of time, but oh well. I was just excited to see folks here and appreciate that passion. So could we get a motion to approve the agenda? And a second, please.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Larson, seconded by Councilmember Cassidy. Call for the question, starting with you, Councilmember Larson.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Great, and that passes. One thing I can understand if folks are disappointed about not getting the public comment right now. If you have time available, I would ask you to stay. We have some conversations about some of these budgetary questions, and if you can stay and hear some of that process about how things work, why we're trying to do these certain things, understanding impact to community, how can we mitigate those kinds of things, we'd love to have you stay and learn. So, all right. First up is our non-action items. So first is discussion concerning Resolution 1385, a resolution of the governing body of the City of Lander amending Resolution 1381 to clarify the question of the 0.75% sales and use tax to specifically establish a 4-year term in the affiliated memorandum of understanding. I've asked Mr. Butterfield to come here and join us. So if you would please come on up to the front for this, with the idea being Mr. Butterfield's been deeply involved in conversations with the working group. Developing this process has been part of the conversation with the county commissioners. So they've looked at the MOA and are in agreement with what it looks like. They refrained from signing it in deference to the communities. They like what it is, agree with it is, and they're also aware if they sign first, it kind of puts a little awkwardness, and so they want to leave it open if there's continued refinements to be made. So Mr. Butterfield was part of that conversation with the county commissioners, as well as his own council in Riverton. And in fact, they did have both conversation and made some amendments. So for us not to reinvent the wheel, this is why I asked him to be here to walk us through that process. And please, as we go, let's ask questions so we can understand it. We are not voting on the MOA tonight, but we do need to vote on that in the fairly near future for that. So with that, Mr. Butterfield, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Your Honor, and council members, staff. It's good to be here today. It's always a pleasure to be on Lander. I'll have opportunities to provide a little bit of information, but I am happy to stand for questions as I was a member of the Joint Committee on Funding. I don't even remember the name, Key Resources, Key Services. Thank you. The acronym was even worse than that. As it relates to the resolution before you tonight, this is a clarifying resolution, and this was a good catch, I think, by our Fremont County Clerk. State statute does state that the term of the proposed tax does need to be listed in the ballot initiative. It was implied by saying that the tax would come back in 2030. That's how the optional 0.5% was done. But I think in an abundance of clarity, the clerk wanted to make sure that it explicitly stated 4 years. And I think that's a very good idea. In working with our legal counsel, we felt that we could keep our previous resolution as passed in place and then offer a new resolution, simply amending the previous resolution that explicitly stated that it was a 4-year term. And again, this is all up to the voters of Fremont County to choose if this is something they want to move forward with or not. As it relates to the proposed memorandum of agreement, this is where a lot of clarity comes in as it relates to the use of the optional 0.75% funds. It's a very simple agreement, and I think that is good in the sense that when we're talking about tax and when we're talking about asking people to tax themselves, it should be very simple. It should be very clear so that there are not questions. I'll briefly run through a few of the recitals, but again, would happily stand for questions. First and foremost, this agreement clarifies how the funds are distributed to the municipalities. As the tax is potentially collected, if it is passed, those funds are sent to the state of Wyoming. The Department of Revenue then distributes the proceeds of the tax to the municipalities and the county based on population. That's exactly how sales tax works currently. So the model for the optional tax is similar in that the state does not remit the funds to the county treasurer. It remits the funds directly to the municipalities and the county based on their population percentages. The agreement then states that each municipality or party to this agreement is maybe a better way to say that, will create a restricted fund or line items to ensure that there is full transparency on the receipt and the use of the funds. The agreement also makes clear that no part of the tax shall be transferred to any of the party's general fund. As it relates to,
Can I interrupt a
Yes.
second? For folks in the room, I'm psyched you stayed. Thank you so much. If you want to follow along with this, it is available online. So if you go to the city webpage, go to government, upcoming events, on the upper right hand is regular session meeting, and then the agenda packet is there as a PDF if you want to follow along.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I'll just hit three additional points and then yield the floor for your discussion, obviously. This agreement outlines that 54% of the proceeds that are received by each party would go towards ambulance. The county currently has the contract for ambulance service, so the way that this agreement is currently written is for the county to administer the funds generated by the tax to go towards ambulance. And again, that percentage is 54%. It then states that 31% of a party's proceeds would be distributed to the city of Riverton to support commercial air service. The reason for that is the city of Riverton has the contract with the state of Wyoming, who has the contract with our commercial air service provider. Finally, 15% of a party's proceeds would be then distributed to the Fremont County Association of Governments to cover ground transportation, and that's public ground transportation. Obviously, that could go towards WRTA. It could also go towards senior bus services or any public ground transportation options. The effective date of the memorandum of agreement would come into play
Before you're
if
there,
passed.
this is one of the questions that came up for council. So in terms of having concern about signing the resolution without understanding the allocations in that process. So before we go further, council, are there any questions about the collection process, the payment process before we go any further into the document? Yeah, Councilmember Han.
I have a comment. What we're talking about is you want to talk about the MOU But we're not going to vote on the MOU tonight. We're supposed to vote on the resolution. I thought we discussed that last time. I mean, my big concern is I want to know what is in, I see what's there, but I want to vote on I want to vote on the memorandum of understanding. So I know that when I vote on this, that I know exactly how things are going to take. This is the same thing I said last time. It's the cart before the horse. I mean, I'm not going to agree to something that I don't know all the details. I don't think you should have to. And I thought that's what we were gonna, I thought that's what we were gonna do. I saw what you guys have. Actually, I listened to it at the commissioners meeting and I agree with it. But to vote on this, to vote on this, this 3/4 cent sales tax, not for me, guaranteed knowing exactly how that's going to be. To me, it's okay if I vote on this and they change it. But I don't agree with that. I don't understand it. To tell you the truth, I think that should be in this document here. We should be able to know exactly how it's going to be spent and then vote to send this to the citizens. That's the way it should be. I just don't understand.
So, having this as a more of a discussion topic was in response to our last meeting, the concern of folks didn't have the familiarity with the memorandum of agreement in order to support the ballot language clarification that it was for 4 years. Also knowing that when we have these weightier documents, council wants to have a discussion point before voting on it. So if the preference is to table the voting on the resolution that clarifies that it's only for a 4-year term, we can do that. And at our subsequent meeting, have a vote first on the MOA and then on changing the resolution.
I think that's the only right thing to do because I
Yeah,
can't.
but the intent for us here and having Mr. Butterfield here is the MOA is what also an integral part of what goes to our constituents so that they understand how the funds are going to be used. And likewise, again, that was a concern voiced by council members last time that they wanted time to really look at the details of the MOA and how the funds would be received, allocated, how changes to this would be made before agreeing to sign the MOA. So from that standpoint, I think we're on track tonight, but we can, when we get to the point about the resolution of 1385, item B under 4, we can move to table that until after this has been voted on. Simple enough.
I would like to do that. And I would like to make one more comment. I do believe in these fair taxes because there's a lot of people that contribute outside of our community. But one of the big problems that I have, and it's going to continue to be, is supporting failing businesses. It never ends, and they don't fix their problems. Most of these entities we're talking about, they've had problems for years. They said that they were going to get them fixed, and it never happened. So what happens is if they're being paid, they don't fix their problems. I mean, they've had a lot of these have had accounts receivable problems for 15 years that I've, been sitting up here. But so what happens is they take the money year after year and it never ends. They don't fix the problems. So this is not going to be, if this tax passes, this tax at the end of this, they're going to be back. This is never ending. It's just it's a revolving door. So anyway, thank you very much, Mayor.
Yep.
I just want a clarification. The MOA, which is in our packet, and you would like additional time with that. Is that what I'm hearing here?
I would prefer to have everything and know exactly what we're voting on. I don't want to vote on something that I don't know. The problem with me is I know where it started with FCAG controlling the money, and I was never in favor with that. I mean, that was an idea.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
if, I don't want that to happen. I
Yeah.
want what,
Yeah.
what I saw the
Okay.
other day and,
Yeah.
I'm fine
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Councilmember Hahn. So I think it's, part of this is a sequence. We want the MOA to be agreed upon first, and then the
Sure.
ballot language clarified.
Please.
Yes, and it was never unanimous that FCAG wanted to have that responsibility. That was
No, but the
for
language,
any number of reasons.
Yeah.
That was not a path we wanted to go
Yeah.
down. So any other questions about the allocation of percentages before we move on? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. And I think it's important to note that the MOA clarifies that these funds can only go towards the three services that are in the ballot initiative. And that would be ambulance service, commercial air service, and public ground transportation. There are not funds available for businesses or discretionary purposes like previous defeated economic development tax. The effective date is after signatures, then also after the tax potentially passes. The term is that the MOA stays into effect until the tax is defeated. Paragraph 8C is important in that this MOA can be amended, but it has to be amended by the governing bodies. And I think that's very important to point out. You as the governing body and lander have full responsibility of the use of the potential economic development tax funds. Therefore, you should be the party that can choose whether or not this agreement is passed or if it's amended in the future. Yes.
Can you use your mic, please?
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to remember where I was going with this. Okay, let me think here just a second. Oh, yes. So we've got Riverton, Du Bois, Lander, Pavilion, and Hudson, right? That's parties to this agreement.
And Shoshone.
Shoshone.
Yep.
And Shoshone. Okay, so can the governing body in Lander change any part of this MOA, or does it need to be done as a majority of the governing parties in the whole countywide?
Good question.
Through you, Mayor, to Councilman, it has to be unanimous with the parties of the agreement.
Okay, so everybody's got to agree to that.
Majority does not rule in this instance. All governing bodies agreeing to it, or all parties agreeing to.
Good luck on that. Okay.
Yes, Councilmember Cassidy.
Thank you for coming today. We had Mick and Sarah come in. We had a really good discussion, debate about this a few months back. On its face, I was in opposition of it. I tried to make a strong case that this is not economic development activity, and that they've broadened the scope significantly. Just trying to give you some context for where I'm at. That they've broadened the scope significantly. They broadened the description of economic development to where our fire department is now economic development if we want it to be. There are some core services of a civilized society that should be described and communicated to, the citizens of this county as core services and not economic development. And I discussed that with Mick here in this room and said, hey, we're trying to solve the same problem. I agree with you. It's the method through which you're trying to solve the problem that I disagree with. And that I feel that, using the economic development pathway to solve this problem is not truthful, not honest, and not correct. The second component of that for me is that if you only have 1% available to pursue economic development, okay, we're going to consume 3/4 of that potential to do these three very narrow in scope things that might have high impact, but they're very narrow, which leaves the county and the municipalities very little funds if they wanted to do anything else. And then whenever you read the document, as Mr. Larson kind of alluded to, it's being written in such a way that it's ironclad. It's going to be, easy to create and hard to destroy, easy to create and hard to adapt or modify. So it'd be very difficult for Lander to say, hey, we disagree with the outcome after 4 years. We would like to modify it in this particular way. And then we have to go on the information offensive across the county to find allies. And the likelihood, I think, as Mr. Larson was alluding to, is the probability of that is quite low. So I'm against it. I think the problem is a problem and it should be addressed. I think the method that's being taken is not right. So that's my stance on it. The question that I have, I think, for you or for the mayor, perhaps, is that, we agreed, it's not a voting topic right now, but if we agree on it or we disagree on it, what's the outcome either way? So we're discussing the change of language, right? So if we choose not to change that language, then what? Do we stay with the original language? Does the rest of the county get 51%, and then the majority changes the language? What's the outcome?
So I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. Are you talking about whether or not we accept the resolution to change the ballot language to call out the 4 years, or do you mean language within the MOA? The first one.
The addition of the clarity of the 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer to that, Mr. Butterfield. Is that something if all the communities don't pass the resolution for the ballot language, what does that do?
The modification to the ballot language.
The modification to the ballot
Mayor,
language.
through you, to council member. I believe that the statutory requirement allowing the people to consider this optional 3/4% tax has been met. However, it isn't best practice to provide the clarifying language to the resolution you've already adopted, so that the people will have opportunity to vote on this during the primary. However, providing the amended resolution to clarify 4 years is, I think, helpful to the voter because they'll know that it's explicitly stating that it's 4 years rather than implied. But the legal threshold to have this go to the people hasn't been met. And so I think, to answer your question, there's still an opportunity for voters to choose whether or not this tax is good for them.
So if 50% of municipalities choose to change the language, it would be changed. And if 50% did not, it would remain as it is. Is that similar to the first?
Mayor, through you to the council member, what's required to get a ballot initiative moved forward is either a petition of a certain percentage of people, and it has to be filed by a certain date, or agreement of the county commission through resolution and a minimum of 50% of the municipality. That has been met, and therefore this initiative is going to move forward to the people. I think to your question as to whether or not the 4-year clarifying language will be added, it's up to you as a governing body if you are going to pass that or not, and have that included in the ballot initiative. The county has passed it, city of Irvington has passed it, and if no other governing bodies pass it, then the resolution and the ballot initiative, as already passed and submitted, will go before the voters.
Perfect. That answers the question for me very clearly. So thank you for that.
Yeah. So what in the resolution, what we're voting on is to provide better clarity about that. So, yeah. Yes, Councilmember Josh.
Thank you. So I'm just reading through all this stuff. Why is it only on the primary election ballot only? Is one of my questions. The second thing is I'm reading through our agenda and we've got the first three things we talk about, including you guys, it's asking for money from people, which would be us, the blue collar worker. Not one of these things is giving back really to the community. It's taking. We're paying $5 a gallon for gas. You know, we don't know when that's going to change. And we've got people that, and I'm sorry to say this, I think ambulance should be an essential service, but it's not. Fire and police is. We got three things on there that aren't essential service. And they keep coming back for money every year. And I think 85%, and this is being generous, of the people probably don't use, you know, the bus or the airport in Riverton. And we hope that they don't use the ambulance. But, you know, this is a hard one for me. I mean, we're obviously having a hard time here. We're having troubles with our own stuff in this community. And we've got three things on here that are taking money from the hardworking people in town and not one of them giving anything back. That's an eye opener to me. So, you know, I don't particularly care for this 0.75% tax after the 0.5% tax that we tried and all that. Doesn't look good. Sorry, man. That's just the way I look at it.
No, and there, nothing wrong with, I appreciate you voicing your opinion, and I think there's probably mixed perspective on this up here. And what I see our role in doing is, can we put as good information forward to our constituents for them ultimately to make that decision? And, you know, we have to go with what they decide. So, yeah, yeah, exactly. So, you know, I think it's important this is an instance where we need to focus on providing the best information to our constituents for them to make that informed choice for that. And, you know, one thing that I do like that was suggested by the county commissioners and agreed upon by Riverton with a slight amendment is this section C about how modifications can happen. That was one of the concerns from the 0.5-cent tax. About there was conversation about, should we change the percentage allocation of how those funds were distributed, less in discretionary, more to other services. And that was part of the feedback from the community. They did not like that there wasn't a chance to weigh in on that. And this, I think, provides a path forward for all of our constituents, with the county commission holding a public comment period, and then also specifying that each of the governing bodies, before making their vote, can likewise have a public hearing or try to have a more formal process of outreach to their constituents. So that's an update from what was first brought forward to us a while ago. And I think that's a good one. Councilman Cassidy.
In practice, would that be done via FCAG?
No, be the county commission doing that.
I mean, not the administrative component, but the one municipality trying to institute a change would not directly coordinate with another municipality, correct? It would be through FCAG.
I
Say again?
Yeah, I don't think it would go through, there might be discussion about it, but it would have to be one community, or the two things I think about: a community wanting to change the percentages, or say, for instance, one of these funding sources needed more or less, and another one was less or more. So being able to say, can we reallocate from, you know, 54% to 52%, and this other group gets 32%. A municipality or one of those entities would have to put that forward, and it would go to all of the signature parties on it.
And the reporting of effectiveness by any of these three entities what's the reporting chain for those?
So all of these entities, all of the meetings they have to adhere to open meeting requirements, and all of the entities are audited every year So folks can attend the meetings, request information through public records requests, look at the financial statements, look at the audits.
But they don't report to us, correct? They would not periodically report to us on the health of their
Oh, no, I mean,
organization.
that certainly some of that could be included in the process.
Yeah. So the path that I'm taking in my mind here is that we are tying ourselves to this process for 4 years at 3/4 of the total available economic development money that we could do by law. That money is going to be distributed out to agencies and organizations. It appears that we have no structured feedback loop for them to communicate effectiveness, efficiency, health of those organizations in any way, such that we would be displeased with what's going on, or the people of the community would be displeased with what's going on. So there's no feedback loop to us that would then instigate or drive any municipality to push for change with their peer municipality, right? So how then, what is the driver for that amendment process? Is what I'm kind of asking
Yeah.
about is, what drives any amendments? And if there is no mechanism to drive that is explicitly, put into this document, then there is none, which means the probability of amendment is very close to zero, which means that what we have, we will be stuck with without the ability to refine it. As an example, if the ambulance got, what was the percentage, 30 and some change?
54.
54. If they got
Yeah.
54% of that and that turned into whatever the dollar amount was, and they were hemorrhaging money and it was ineffective and it wasn't helpful, and people were displeased with that, to whom do they communicate that? To whom do they don't have a reporting responsibility to us, I believe, right?
They would to whoever holds the contract with them, which is currently the county commissioner.
Okay.
Or county commission for that.
Right.
So,
Which is not one of these municipalities that would then speak laterally and say, hey, our voters are displeased, or your voters.
they would be. They
The
could
county
bring it.
commission would,
Yeah.
but not the
Yeah.
municipalities, right? So it puts Du Bois as
so-
an example, or Shoshone at a disadvantage, if the way it's written down, or us at a disadvantage. We don't have a closed loop, it seems.
I think we can ask for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and we have had reports from these different entities in the past about here's where we're at, here's the services we're offering, here's our financial standards.
Because it's exceptionally targeted. This is exceptionally targeted to some agencies with what appears to be no reporting requirement of effectiveness, efficiency, competency, et cetera. So if we want there to be an amendment capability, there needs to be a trigger that would cause that to happen, which might be a reporting requirement written into the document saying, hey, you need to speak to every municipality twice yearly to describe the efficiencies that you've gained through having this money. What are your contingency plans if this is not enough and you are asking us to reallocate those percentages? If that's not in here, there's nothing that's going to put them in the room, which is not going to drive any amendments or changes, which means it's just going to roll over every 4 years and it's just going to go off into the ether. That's my concern.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Councilmember Cox.
Thank you, Mayor, and good comments. It's been historically, WRTA comes in and provides a report for us. We know exactly where they stand. FAST comes in and provides reports as well. And we've had that since 2016, I believe, with, I say FAST,
Yep,
right?
yep.
For just a second, I was like, so I think, although I do think there is a opportunity for municipalities to say we would like to have, twice a year reporting, and so that we can kind of monitor it, but really also it boils down to the financials and how that money is being spent, where it's allocated and how much, because that's really what our oversight is. The ambulance has always done that through the county because the county subsidizes it. So they do provide that. So we would be able to get that information really very quickly. And then I do think there's some more disconnect from airport and FAST a little bit. As a consumer of the airport, there's been issues, and we want to be able to have an open dialogue with those that are using that service as well as our constituents. constituents who are paying for that service. But I think that we could require that as a municipality very easily.
Yep.
And would be worth our time. But keeping it to what the intent is.
Councilmember Stuble.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, great points, Councilman Cassidy. I would suggest that, we can amend this MOA, we can propose amendments for other parties to agree to before we finalize it. Under general provisions, why don't we suggest that we add a reporting requirement? And I would name, instead of, FAST and NWRTA, I would name the governing bodies that are administering funds. So City of Riverton for commercial air service, the county commission or Fremont County treasurer for the ambulance services, and then the FCAG. That's where the money is being distributed for ground transportation on a annual or twice annual reporting mechanism. I think you'd add that. And I like the idea that it's a much more formal. We've had informal, presentations through the years. Awesome, but let's bake it in here. We're going to hear every 6 months. How's it going? What your budgets are looking like. What are coming challenges? Are there needs and changes in the funding that's required? That would then trigger any amendments to the MOA.
Yeah. So I've watched Mr. Butterfield taking a lot of notes there. So is that something that seems appropriate, that it could be added in I don't know where it would be added in the under the heading of general provisions, but some kind of amendment requiring each of these bodies to provide a twice annual update to the governing bodies.
Yeah, Mayor, that's definitely something we can add in for your consideration.
Great. And again, these are great to have these conversations, and this is part of, it's inherently an iterative process with 7 bodies doing it. So it started with the county. They thought they had the cake ready to bake. Riverton added something. We're adding something. So this is part of how things work. Councilmember Larson.
Yes, Mayor. Thank you. I think something that we need to keep in mind here also is that WRTA is not going to become self-supporting with this tax. It's just not going to happen. And I don't think you're going to see the same thing with the ambulance service. I would like to see a lot more information on what they're able to bill out and on what they use. And I think this reporting back to the city on a regular basis is a good start to that. But WRTA is not going to become self-supporting. The Riverton Airport, just depending on what way things go, whether the fuel prices increase or what happens there, this is not going to be the cure-all, and we're trying to provide services for this community. That's the whole idea behind this, is that we've got ambulance service here. We've got air service here for the community, whether 85% of them use it or not. It's there for the community. And the same way with WRTA, maybe 85% of the people don't use it, but it's something that a civilized community provides. And, I think that's the way I look at it anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I, between your comment, Councilmember Larson, and what Councilmember Josh Hahn brought up, yes, you're right, Councilmember Hahn, that we are trying to provide services. There are wonderful benefits to living in small town rural Wyoming. Having appropriate funding for all these services, from a pool to recreation to ambulance to redoing our streets, we know that's very much needed. It's beyond what 7,500 folks can do. And in our outreach to other funding partners, one of the questions always asked is, before you talk about getting money from us, what are you doing to help yourself? And if we're not doing something to help ourselves, we get the talk to the hand. Understandably so, right? These are tough choices we have to make. And I'm really psyched we have community members here to be watching the challenges that we face as a community. I really appreciate folks being here for it. So, okay. Councilmember Cassidy.
Mayor, just, I described my point on it, so I think you understand my position quite well, but I do want you to know that if 51% are in support of it and it gets across the goal line, I want it to be the very best that it can possibly be. You know, even if I disagree with it, and I want to work towards making it the best to be presented to the voting public, right? So that's where my concerns are coming from, is that as I read it, it feels like accountability is disaggregated, And do you feel, because I know you're much, much more familiar with the process and the history and the path to today, do you feel that amending process would be something that would be workable and very easy for municipalities to move through? Because you're just so much more familiar with it than probably any of us.
Mayor, through you. Councilmember, I do believe that this is the appropriate amendment process, because you as a governing body first have to choose if you want to be party to this agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And then other governing bodies could choose the same. The tyranny of the minority or majority on this agreement is not a healthy thing. And therefore, if Riverton chose to make an amendment to this and try to impose that on the city of Lander or another city, that I don't think that's the right way to go. And so I don't also believe that we as members of the community or other governing bodies could compel you one way or the other. You are the governing body for your area. So that's where I think the unanimity is important. Mm-hmm. And I also think the 30-day public notice requirement is also important for the people to know how this potential tax is going to be used. Remember, this MOA is only about how you as a governing body will use the funds. If you choose not to opt into this and this tax passes, you have the responsibility to ensure that these funds go towards ground transportation, ambulance, and commercial air service. It's my humble opinion that we as a county can accomplish the services better by working together, but you could choose as a governing body to handle that of your own accord and not enter into this MOA. But if you enter into this MOA, a tyranny of the majority or minority wouldn't work well for you as a governing body. And let's say, for instance, a reason for the amendment could come up in that a new ambulance provider comes forward in a year or a year and a half. That would be an important provision to consider amending in this agreement as to where the 54% of the funds would go. So I hope I answered your question. I do believe that this is an appropriate way for you as a governing body to work with other governing bodies, and then also consider potential changes that could come forward in a year or so. And if I may, please forgive me just a little attitude. As it relates to accountability and transparency, I think that's very critical. You are held accountable by the people who voted you in, and that we are all part of a community where transparency is important, especially if we choose to tax ourselves. And I can't advocate one way or the other, but if the community chooses to do that, you'll notice in subparagraph 8I, there is an ability to audit the records of all the parties. That could be done through a public record request, but you as a governing body could also require that of the other party if you felt that performance measures, as you mentioned, weren't appropriately being met. And that, I hope, provides a little bit of comfort to you and also the members of the public that they can find out how the funds are being used should they choose to tax themselves.
Can you refine this or correct me where I'm wrong here, in that when Mick and Sarah were here, it required 50% of the municipalities to get on the ballot, right?
Correct.
So that was the bar. 50% was the bar, but 100% is the bar for any amendments or modifications. Is that right? Unanimity, as you said.
Mayor, if I may, I think two separate concepts.
Yes.
If that's okay. The 50% bar is the bar set by statute as to whether or not the question would even be considered on the ballot for the people to choose.
Right.
This MOA is separate of that. This MOA is the governing agreement between the municipalities should the people choose this tax.
Right. Right, and I understand, and the reason I'm tying those two percentages together is that it feels like bar was 50% for this to be considered, right? But now it takes unanimity to modify or change were it to pass, right? And one of them is a low bar and one of them is exceptionally high bar, especially when you're disaggregated to get everybody to agree. And that just, I don't know if that 100% is an arbitrary number, like, hey, how many do we need? Oh, let's choose 100, or is that directed to anyone? Who chose 100? Who chose, and that unanimous, everybody has to agree. How was that determined? By whom?
Mayor, Councilmember, perhaps I don't understand the question, so forgive.
Sure. So,
But I-
were we to, go ahead, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, excuse me. No, this is your meeting. I'm happy to. The unanimity only relates to you as governing bodies if you choose to opt into the MOA. Your responsibility on using the tax should have passed rests. But as it relates to changing a legal document, the parties of that legal document should be in agreement. And that's where the unanimity comes in. I hope that helps answer. Maybe I'm not understanding.
Yeah, I'm
the
speaking
question.
more to the amendments. Let me see if I can.
And I might be able to help a little bit.
Yeah.
So
please.
the MOA or MOU, MA, whatever you want to call it,
Sure.
that's an agreement between the parties. So it's a contractual obligation.
Right.
Generally, to change a contract, all the parties have to agree on an amendment.
Mhm.
So the 50%, you're right. That's statutory. That gets it on the ballot.
Yes.
But once it's on the ballot, if it's approved, then it becomes an agreement between the parties. And in order for anyone to modify that, there has to be an agreement amongst all the parties that sign.
And that's very helpful. And I'm very grateful for that. And this is where, please somebody punch a hole in this and show me where I'm wrong. But at year 3, a municipality has a severe problem with the outcome. So now what's the mechanism that you generate support for a change of that agreement in year 3? It's going to take a substantial amount of effort by a municipality to impact and affect the entirety of all the municipalities to get that, as you described, and again, thank you, that 100% agreement across the board, which to me then reads that if there's no trigger to cause that to happen and the bar is exceptionally high, that it's probably not going to happen at all, which means that if it gets on the ballot and it gets approved, I've been clear on my stance, but I want it to be the best it can, right? If it gets there, it's not going to be modified. The probabilities are very low that it's going to be modified, which means that it needs to be wired tight, super, super clear, and fit for purpose. It has to achieve the aim. If it doesn't achieve the aim, you do not pursue it. We've already been told it's not going to achieve the aim by an opinion, by one person, right? But that it's not going to keep WRTA afloat, et cetera, right? That's my concern. So as it's written now, those are my concerns. It's not, the probability of it being changed in year 3 by one municipality to affect everybody else is exceptionally low. And just punch a hole in that and show me where I'm wrong. I want to be wrong. I want to be wrong, but I don't see it.
I don't know if I can punch a hole in it. And maybe I have a different perspective having worked with other municipalities in many conversations. I think if a municipality came with a well thought out, well reasoned, well defined proposition, and the onus is on them to do that. And what I've seen is there is a strong belief that fundamentally, to use that metaphor, a rising tide floats all ships. And if one community says this is problematic, here's specifically what's going on, here's the proposed resolution, it's well reasoned, well thought out, well articulated, that the other municipalities are actually more likely to say, oh, I get it, you're right, we will agree to the change and support it.
And I agree with you, but Shoshone's going a different way with ambulance. Du Bois did not agree, right? We've already seen that people going different routes and disagreeing about it fundamentally, right? So it's already there. You know, and I just feel like if you tie yourself to this 3/4%, leaving yourself little to no to affect any true, pure economic development, you know, if you tie yourself to that for 4 years and you say, hey, we have a get out of jail free card, we can pull the plug, we can pull this amendment and we can change this, but it's a very high bar and it's very difficult to execute, the probability of it happening is very low. You know, and I'd like to be wrong on that, but that's my read of it, you know. You know, and there's already disagreements on it.
Yeah, I don't think there's as much disagreement about the need for external funding. So for members of Du Bois, fewer of them use the Riverton Airport for commercial air service as they do going to Jackson. But they want ambulance service. So, and they know they need external funding for that. So their choice might be, yes, we will vote for the tax and we will only use it for ambulance service. And they can do that. They can't use it for discretionary funds, but they could choose to use it, all the money that they get for ambulance service. Yeah. So, yeah. So Councilman Hahn. Okay. So Councilman Hahn.
On the ballot, the percentages are going to be, are
Yeah.
the citizens going to know where the money is going to go?
That is through the MOA. And that's why we want the MOA to be finalized so that it can go out to our constituents well in advance of when absentee ballots start, so that they can read and understand and, yeah,
Everybody should know what they're voting on.
correct,
So
correct.
if everybody's knows what they're voting on, I think that the citizens are going to be fine with that. And if we can't get if there happens to be something changing with any one of the individuals, I'm pretty sure that that can be figured out.
I would like to think so. I think we have a good collegial sense of wanting to help each other out.
I think so.
So, but yes, I agree that the memorandum of agreement, or MOU, is an important part for our voters to know. Here's the nuts and bolts. So ballot language, because it has to be consistent each time it goes to the ballot, having the specific percentages becomes problematic, because what if things need to change? What if we shift to a volunteer ambulance service and they don't need 54% anymore? Then we have to have a whole new ballot initiative and that whole process.
Mayor, did you say that in that example you used for Du Bois name, let's say that they could allocate 100%?
Correct.
How does that square
So-
with these percentages then?
So if they choose not to be part of the MOA and the ballot initiative passes, so the community of Du Bois will be allocated their percent from this, and they are restricted to only use it for one of these things because of the ballot language.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
So, other questions for Mr. Butterfield or among us? Oh, here. Councilman Josh
Yes,
Hahn.
please.
So was it an MOA and it was supposedly on the ballot for the 0.5% sales tax, 20% to the airport, 10% to WRTA? So in a situation like this, how does it differ from that? Because the airport came up short, came to us wanting more than 20%, and we gave it to them. And that was against what was on the ballot language. And we broke that rule. So what's the point of having this if we're just going to do what we want anyway?
Great question. Glad you brought that up. Where that funding came from was there was 70% that was left to be discretionary for economic development. And so
I don't believe an airport, if it's on there for 20%, that's what they should get out of that's it. 20% is 20%. It's not 30%. It's not 35%, right? It's 20%. So if that's what we vote on as the public, what makes it right for the council or anybody to decide, well, we're going to overstep that and give them this amount? And how is this going to be different from that?
The key part is there was the 70% that was stated as discretionary for each governing body to decide how to use those funds. This does not allow that discretionary allocation. It can only be used for these three topics.
So 70% wasn't, I mean, it's discretionary, but it's for economic development. Not,
Which was.
we're
the,
just gonna do what we want with it because we can.
uh,
It's not our
yes,
money. It's their money. All of them sitting out there is their money.
right. And
So like when we decide to do something like that, it makes us look bad. And I don't like to look bad.
and
So
agree-
that's
and
why I
that's-
voted no on it
Yeah.
then. So, I don't like any of this because it all turns out, it's not, it never turns out the way you guys are saying it's going to turn out. It didn't the last time, it didn't work. And this is a 4-year thing and it's a little bit more money. And it's, I don't know.
Yeah, and again, I appreciate having different points of view brought up, again, eliminating discretionary use under the broad umbrella of economic development, as Councilmember Cassidy stated, can be interpreted many, many ways. This keeps it very narrow. It's one of three things, so it can't be used for, the many things that the half-cent economic development tax was used for. It is absolutely restricted to these three funds. Yep,
Mayor, if I
Councilmember
may.
Stubble.
Thank you. I'm grateful for the robust debate and discussion on this point. I wanted to seize or emphasize a few pieces. I heard Councilman Cassidy, if I didn't mishear you, ask about when we're amending the MOA, is this current proposal of, all the parties who signed the MOA, the easiest way to amend it? And I heard Mr. Butterfield, you answer, I think very precisely, you said it's the appropriate way in your belief. And I caught that word difference, and I want to emphasize that right now because I actually don't think the MOA should be easy to amend. I think that having every body, every party, every governing body who is a member of it, not many, some might not join, not be able to overrule each other. Again, we're in a contract with these other governing bodies in this scenario. We should all have that equal say. Our voters, right, in those municipalities all deserve to have that say. Because the scenario you put forward, Councilman Cassidy, that I'm sitting with seriously, of saying one party is having a problem with a service. What happens? What if we all ignore that? And perhaps I'm too optimistic in that scenario, but I'm thinking through, like, what would that actually be? What if that was ambulance service? What if Du Bois was a party here and wasn't getting the service that they needed? What if we weren't, right? I mean, we don't pick on Du Bois, I suppose. It's hard for me to believe that the ambulance service, a problem with how they're running an operations or funding, would be so targeted to one place. I think that problem would actually be more widespread. And so that we would all actually want to have we'd have some discontent. We would catch a problem when they're reporting to us. We would want to solve it. And so perhaps that's my more optimistic frame, not about the widespreadness of the problem, but the fact that there would be a collegiality, like this is a collective service that underpins a fundamental piece of Fremont County, and that's all of us. Even if we're getting excellent service, we want Du Bois, right? Because we have friends and neighbors up there who are not, so we're going to stand up for them too. So that's maybe a philosophical difference for me around the optimism, but I don't want it to be easy to amend. I don't want it to be as hard as, say, it has to go to the ballot and go back to a new special election with the expense of special elections and all that to amend it, because that is a much more like clunky way for us to adapt to changing circumstances. If in my optimistic world, I hope the county decides on a better way to deliver ambulance services than their current model, I want us to be able to say, oh, there are cost savings with a different way of doing this. They don't need the 50% any longer. What else could we use to fund? So I want actually to find not the easiest way to amend the agreement, but the happy middle of saying it's not actually easy, i.e. 51% and a majority rule of all the parties can, overrule some, of the agreeing parties, but I don't want it to be super onerous either.
I
Yes.
understand. I understand absolutely what you're saying. I think that it's very important to remember that when you give up sovereignty, there's a cost.
Sure.
When you give up that sovereignty, there's a cost. And if it's hard to aggregate political power, or if it's designed in such a way, purposefully or not, that makes it exceptionally hard for you to recover sovereignty, you will not. Right? So there's two sides of what you're saying, and I hear you, and I agree with some of the things you're saying, but the organization with the least social or political power that doesn't get the services that it requires does not have a lever to pull to affect change. And if it's in our best interest to go one direction and Shoshone's to go another, how are they going to recover? Or is the collective going to recover.
Mhm.
You
I
know,
mean,
it's just very important to remember that when you give up that sovereignty through things like this that are binding, and they have immense value in law and governance, they have immense value. But if you do not have a workable way to recover that, there's a cost to that. That's my
Yeah.
opinion on it,
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
Councilman Cassidy, I think that, I think there's
Yeah.
so many trade-offs we're weighing here, trying to right size the answer. So thank you. I wanted to address one of the pieces, Mayor, if I could.
But before you go there, to me, this is an interesting part of, these are two sides of the same coin, essentially, where also part of that is our smaller communities in the county often feel overrun by the larger communities. And so the idea of every community has equal voice in this process, likewise offers protection for smaller communities. And both of those, both sides of that coin are true, for sure. It has benefits in it and it has challenges to it. Absolutely. Councilmember Stu. Yes,
Thank you,
please
Mayor.
continue.
I think just a few final comments for me. I'm glad to have the MOA in front of us tonight, thanks to the folks who worked diligently on this so that we could be as transparent as possible when we're looking at the, getting in advance of the absentee ballots and having voters have all the information for them to make their decisions about this ballot language. I'm glad we're not putting the percentages of distribution into the ballot language. I think the MOA is the appropriate vehicle for that as well. I'm glad to see the extra 30-day public comment period on any changes or amendments to the MOA. And I want to name that in practice is going to be a minimum, not a maximum. In fact, the word minimum is even in there, but in practice, we need to take forward an amendment to the MOA. We're in discussions with, our colleagues in the MOA, the other parties, to garner support. We are going to be talking about it in work sessions. We're going to eventually be voting on an amendment to take forward to the other parties to consider. And so this 30-day public comment period is going to be, in my view, first, right? Fremont County puts out a public comment period on an idea. We've workshopped and taken forward. There's public comment at all our meetings. There's plenty of notice of those things. So in practice, the amount of public comment input and the amount of time for that to come in, which will be incredibly valuable to make sure that we're representing our voters, is going to be much more than 30 days to get this MOA amended in any way. So Mayor, that's where I am. I was a yes vote in March when we said, let's approve the resolution to have voters decide if this was a source of revenue that they wanted to move forward. We passed a resolution that put it on the ballot. Tonight, we're looking at amending a piece of that language, but it is on the ballot right now by our majority vote. And I'm really excited to see if voters decide here are not essential, but critical services that we can either fund through the collection of an additional sales tax or not. And if it's or not, then it comes back to us decide, are these services we're going to look at pulling from our general fund? And does that mean we'll contribute to ambulance, but less road work? Does that mean less attention to aging sewer services, but commercial air service? So these are the choices in front of us. It's the aim, in my view, is not to make sure air service is getting 100% of the funding they need. Let me put that differently. I think that the aim is to say, here's an additional source of revenue that voters have approved, or is that going to be funding that we provide out of our general fund, which will be a very difficult conversation about services that we then and our voters need to inform us would need to cut in favor of some of these services.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good summary. Other comments, questions for Mr. Butterfield or among us? So one comment would be, or question for you, Mr. Butterfield, what kind of process would work best for creating the language about a reporting requirement? So is that something you feel comfortable writing, having heard our conversations? Is it something you want wordsmithing from others on? And then how does that work in terms of it would need to go back in front of the Riverton Council to revote on it, obviously, as well as coming before us at some point. So what kind of time frame and process would you envision for that? And I know I'm putting you on the spot for it.
Mayor, that's fine. I'm happy to provide language and circulate it to you, your legal counsel as well. And then if that is adopted by this governing body, then yes, Riverton would have to reconsider.
Okay.
Mayor, it is written in here that we can audit and access records as per our request
Whenever you want.
whenever we want.
Yeah.
It's in here,
And I think we had some conversation, but I think what you're saying, Councilmember Cassidy, is that you're looking for something more concrete than we can request. You want that baked in that they are, well, what's baked in is that what's presented is we can request. I believe what Councilmember Cassidy is asking for, there will be. report, Not,
I agree
not in
with,
response to a
yeah.
request, that the entities will be required to provide updates.
yeah, instead of we can ask that they shall report to the municipalities, so that we can get that to the public, because we could by choice not request any information for 4 years,
Yeah, that's right.
and it would be nice if a lot of public funds are going to be funneled to these three organizations, that the minimum that we ask of them is a reporting, annual, semi-annual, whatever it turns out to be, some kind of reporting responsibility. They come back and say, hey, this is how it's impacted us. We've been able to increase services. These are our challenges. This is our contingency planning, so that people feel like their money is being well spent, and those entities are surviving or thriving on what they're getting from the public coffers.
It does provide it in the language of the
Yeah.
body of the MOA. It does say that they have to respond immediately. And we provide what our written instruction is and what we want reported out. That's annually, biannually. Not every city or municipality is going to want to do it the same. I think it is written in the body of this that allows us to do that. And it's vague enough that we can ask for everything that.
Yeah, I'm wondering, trying to get into brief wordsmithing. I wonder if we can add a sentence to section I stating, participating entities may request, direct reports up to twice a year. Yeah, I mean, yes,
I just don't think it's necessary in the sense of you don't want it to be guide railed. So then you are pigeonholed that that you can only do what maybe you need them every month if things are going poorly. So you don't want to pigeonhole yourself. It's written vague enough that you can do whatever it is that you need to do, to have that comfort level of reporting from the entities. And I don't think you guardrail it. Otherwise, that could be problematic.
Can I read back to you to make sure that I understand? So you would prefer that it would be a, instead of a requirement, it would be just written in here that if we ask, you can tell, but there's no requirement for them to communicate to the municipalities. There's no requirement for them to brief, per se.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's my belief in all the years that I've sat on council that we've received annual reports from these organizations, and the annual report for the ambulance comes via the county commission, and that's available for public information. I think our municipality, we adhere to what our constituents want, and I would imagine they would want some accountability from these agencies if this passes. And then that would be a simple, we request in June and December a report. And if we need more than that, we request more. And I think that allows us that governance over the fiscal aspect of what we're funding. And then we have the ability to look at that from the perspective of, is this values? Is it doing what it is? Is it hitting the mark? Yeah. And I think we could, then we pay attention to it too. And it's not just an annual.
I think the outcome is the same. I think my approach is a requirement versus a request, but the outcome is the same, right? If you request it and I require it, they both come, they brief it. I think that the nature of it being public funds, I feel more comfortable with a requirement, but either way, as long as we get the information so that we can understand how it's being spent, that's good.
Great. Robust conversation. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Butterfield, for being here. Much appreciated. So can we move on to our next topic? Okay. All right. Woo. Here we are on B. So again, this is information. And next up is item B, discussion concerning proposed resolution 1387, amending resolution 1358, fees and utility rates for water and wastewater service, July 1, 2026 to June 30, 2027. And Lance, this is you to walk us through the thought process behind this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. And so if you remember, we've done a master plan for our water. And in that, there were projected costs for our projects improvements laid out in front of that. And our rate was 7% moving forward in order to pay back our future loan payments. We are getting grants, we are getting some loan forgiveness in what we're doing, but we still have a portion that comes locally for all the projects that we're performing. Things are getting more expensive in the water world, chemicals more expensive, trucking effects, bringing chemical over from Salt Lake. The 7% is what we're recommending at this point in time. This next year, we have a budget or a worksheet that we fill out that puts in all the current data so that we can supply that. With Christie being new, we didn't get that worksheet complete, so we're not saying any more than the 7%. Our water sales are on track as to what we projected, so they're not currently low, but we're not sure what people will do for purchasing water this summer. But this is an enterprise account, so you have to have enough money to be able to run the enterprise account and then also make the improvements or projects if you'd like. And so we still are moving forward with Buena Vista is starting. We're looking at Fifth Street. We're starting Baldwin Creek next year. So you have a lot of infrastructure replacement projects coming. Those have water lines, and a lot of them have sewer lines as well. In the sewer world, what's going on is that we're treating very well with our lagoon system. Lagoons do not treat nutrients well in the winter. And so EPA and DEQ, we've had lots of discussions on our new permits and what's going to happen in the future. And so if you've been following other towns across the state, Green River went mechanical to treat nutrients. Their project was $53 million. And that's not just the initial cost of that project. It's adding, 4 to 5 more bodies in their enterprise. We're trying to do everything that we can to not go away from a lagoon system. Right now, we use, 1 to 2 employees on a daily basis. We're monitoring what happens. What we're looking at as options is anything from, ground treatment to absorb some of those nutrients. So if we can figure that out, to adding an additional filter media into the treatment process, that additional filter media process would be a $15 to $20 million project, as well as a headwork structure. In Lander, we've always gotten away with not having headworks, which means we're not removing trash from the system. It settles out in the first pond. At some point, we need to be responsible enough to make sure that we do that and haul the landfill trash that doesn't degrade in that system away. We've always had that project as something we would like to do, but it doesn't affect water quality discharge at the river. And so these rate increases are for future. We have major projects. If you want to keep doing infrastructure projects that we need to have the money to pay for. And so this reflects your wishes in the master planning as far as moving forward with, full street replacements, water line, sewer line replacements, renewing infrastructure. And then we're also completing our sanitary sewer master plan, hopefully project study this year, which will give you, a definite rate recommendation in the future, like the water master plan has. And then we're doing storm sewer as well. So those are within the budgets this year to complete those studies so that you have those to look at in front of you on how many miles, how old the pipes are, how many inlet structures, how many manholes, and condition assessments of all of those. So those come back with true recommendations. Hey, before these fail, or if you have to replace them when they fail, this is what you should expect. And then we keep up with construction costs on how much that cost to move forward. So that's the water and sewer resolution portion of that. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks. Questions for Lance about that, Councilman Hahn?
Are we used to reline the sewers, do we do that anymore?
Yeah. And so the ones that we're going to reline, we video them, we camera them, we mark them as being okay, and they stay in the ground. And then we're going to bring that in as one project to have it done efficiently at one time. So it's more that can be done later when we leave a section under the
Uh-huh.
street intact. So still part of our process.
How many, we have what's second, third, fourth? How far did we go when we were doing that?
We've got basically fifth through second completed.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
Yeah, and those are your main transmission lines going down to the lagoons.
Yeah.
I mean, you cut down from $6 million, 6 million to 8 million gallons a day peak to 2.5 peak. So it made a huge difference on those lining projects.
Leaking.
Yeah, and we're gonna do 10 manholes per year. So we've been going around looking at the manholes, and they have a nice product that does those in place instead of pulling them out of the ground and putting new ones in. Much cheaper to shoot in, seal in liners and get water out. So we're looking good rich addition. There's a lot of bad manholes there. And then our line from Tweed Lane that we have in that takes the county flow across, that's kind of north of town. That one's infiltrating, and then at the industrial park, getting a lot of leakage there. So those are areas we're going to target getting more water sealed out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions about this? Councilmember Stubble.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, let's see, am I jumping too far ahead? Do you want to stay on the first section? I'm down at the discount water program. Tell me.
Let's, yeah, let's,
Okay, I'll wait.
do we have questions about the thought behind why there's fee increase? Yeah. So moving into the discount water, before you jump in. So one thing I had asked staff to do, Regina and Danielle put this together, is it's helpful for, I think, all of us and our constituents, like, well, what does that mean? So essentially the sample utility rate increase, this is pretty close. Like, use me as an example. Like, I've got a standard city lot. I have a vegetable garden, a perennial bed. I have a lawn. What does that look like? So that's what's reflected here in terms of being able to get a little more granular about it. And then also wanted to have included the discounted water and sewer rates. We currently offer this. We've been offering it. I'm hoping that Riverton starts to offer it. They didn't have that, so we've shared that with them. But knowing this impacts our constituents, especially folks who are on fixed income, low income, is this something we want to continue refining? So with that, Councilmember Stubble, I think you wanted to head there.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, perhaps I'll back up to your point about the sample increases, just so we get really granular. It's in front of council right now. It's in the packet, but let's say it out loud, because we are asking, consideration, Councilman Josh Hahn, as you so eloquently put, we are asking people to pay more at a time when there are costs rising across the board, groceries, gas. There are consequences to those gas prices that are going across all sorts of things that we buy. So we should take seriously, and I think we all do, the fact that here's another proposed rate increase that we're asking our residents to bear so that we can provide the service of having updated water and sewer lines. The backlog we know of how outdated and old some of our sewer lines and water lines are is just astounding. So we've entered into a revolving loan program with the state so that we can benefit from, the state program to be able to cover some of those incredible, like $1 million projects, right, that we couldn't cover on our own. And this is a small way to say, we're going to pay our own way as best we can. And we know it's going to impact some people at a time of rising costs. So that's where the discount program comes in. But after laying that groundwork, what I want to point out here is that, we're looking at for standard lots, Mayor, if I'm reading this correctly, the sample summer, we approved this increase. Cost per month would be a $8 increase per month.
8.5.
8.5, thank you. Yeah. So $8.5 increase per month for summer. That's summer watering of lawns, taken into account. That's not nothing. I don't want to trivialize $8.5 a month, and I hope that can be managed. Water is the water usage to some degree when it comes to lawns and gardens can be discretionary for folks. It determines how much they want to water or not as well. Now, holding into account that, this sample piece of $8.5 a month for this summer, let's look at section 6F, where we do now write into this resolution the discount program that has long been offered by practice, but it's the first time we're actually adopting into the resolution, I believe, Mayor. Is that right? So this is the last page, Council, 6F. I'll read it out loud. Residents of Lander for a period of not less than 1 year immediately preceding the filing an application for water and sewer services may make an application to the city clerk on or before April 1st of each calendar year to receive discounted fees for a maximum of 50% reduction in rates as provided in our resolution and may be amended from time to time. So I'm glad that we're institutionalizing this into the fee structure itself rather than just a city hall practice. My question is, perhaps for you, Clerk Fontaine, people's circumstances can change significantly between April 1st and December 31st. Is there a reason we could have this be a revolving application? There is. I'm reading that. Okay. Got it. Okay, so I'm misreading it by hearing that the application, the first one has to be before April 1st. That's the renewal if you're already in it. You can apply at any time. Correct. Excellent. That's what I wanted. Thank you.
Her computer's blocking it. Councilman Josh Hahn.
Okay, so yes, it's that much a month, but when does it end? This is my question. We spend millions on studies where we don't complete a project. We, spend all this money on studies and then we go nowhere with it. And that puts us in a hole to where we have to take loans and then we have to charge the public more. So, my question is, yeah, it's 7%, it's $8.50 during, watering your lawn season, which is thankfully short around here. When does it quit? 7%, 7%, 7%. When is it going to end? If you can give me that answer, I'll quit, but you won't because you never go backwards and you never quit. Right? When does the price go down? When you quit doing studies and not doing the projects, John. That's when the price goes down, when you quit wasting money on things. Does that answer your question?
No.
Well, think about it. Use your brain.
So hang on. Let's bring the temper down here. So this is, I'm glad you brought that up, Councilman Hahn, because it's a question the public also has. So my understanding of why we need our master plans for these things is it identifies our highest need of replacement. It identifies what that cost is going to be so that we can increase no more than what's needed, nor less. We don't want to run out of funds in the middle of a project either. Lance, I'm starting to step into your territory though. Is that a reasonable explanation of, like, again, when we're asking for, funds for the water tank, we had to have the design shovel ready because folks aren't going to fund ideas. They want to know the project. What's the project going to cost? The only way to know the true project cost is to get specific engineering fees, et cetera, done, and the assessment to know the cost. But can you speak to that more eloquently or more detailed?
Yeah, I guess in any sort of plan that you come up with, the most important pages that I look at are in the back in the appendix that give you the capital improvements plan. That's the best estimated cost of what you need to do to stay on top of your system and be able to provide good quality water to your citizens and make sure that you're able to discharge good quality water into the river. So it's very essentially looking at your system as a whole and how do you run and operate it. And then what is that going to cost? And it tries to factor in unknowns, future inflation. You have to stay on top of plugging in actual numbers. But the reality is, as John was saying, everything gets more expensive per year. We have the tool. So now you run the tool. But in 10 years, there could be a whole new set of faces with different priorities up here as far as, what projects they're wanting to pursue. Right now, this is a infrastructure based approach. The reality is that you've got lines 100 years plus in the ground, and especially the ductile iron that are near failure. And so your goals have to be to get those things out of the ground, do actual construction. But to receive funding, people aren't going to fund an idea or fund a conversation. They need to fund something that's written and that they understand and something that's designed and ready to be built. And the more ready you are to construct, the more likely you are to get grant funding. What's hopefully coming from the state, I know that they're funding the assessment in Senate File 69, I believe, but they're looking at every town is in the same position that Lander is. We're not alone, and infrastructure is failing underground. People are having difficulties. I mean, you look at Rollins, other places, they can't even supply some of their water to their citizens anymore. And I mean, the goal is not to be there and not to, overcharge by any means, but there's not state programs for sanitary sewer or storm sewer currently, and they're looking at implementing some of those programs. So to not operate on state help or grants means that money that, like the tank project where we received $10 million, that would come back 100% on the local people to pay for those necessary projects. Or you fail, and then what? You're stuck. You can't have fire flows. You can't run these systems. So you have to decide, what does a responsible owner mean? What is it to, charge the appropriate rates? But I'm a bigger fan of putting dollars in the ground as well. But unfortunately, sometimes to get dollars in the ground, you have to check the boxes.
Great. Thank you for that more detail. Other questions for that? Councilman Cassidy.
The 7% was the result of your analysis there.
Yeah, it was in the master planning documents across the board
Yeah.
and it doesn't go away.
Right,
That's continuing to move forward with the plan over the next 10 years and fund infrastructure improvements. So, I mean, it's unfortunate the cost has gotten there and our bids are coming in high. They're not coming in on the mark. So,
Yeah.
we might be coming back with a different analysis that we look at. That means we either back off on how aggressive we're constructing and replacing things, and we run the risk of having them, cost us in response or failure. But you have to weigh, how aggressive are we gonna get the system replaced and fixed?
Sure. Is there a mechanism, or was there an effort to, maybe a better question, is there a mechanism to run it at a lower percentage and then to deter, create a hierarchy and a priority of the things that you want to achieve and then start lopping off the bottom, right?
Yeah, you're pushing off your capital improvements further out.
Yes, yes.
We're hoping that at some point we can get more streets than the ones we've just designed done. You've got a lot of failing infrastructure and small lines throughout town.
Right.
4-inch lines that aren't the standard anymore that need to be upgraded into 8-inch. If you have somebody come in that needs higher fire flow rates, and
Right.
it's block by block, it's area by area. I mean, I'd
Right.
love to jump into the Sunset Edition, and they need a storm sewer every time it rains.
Yeah.
They get flooded out, and that improvement needs to happen. But right now, these other projects that are in design that we're trying to build are taking priority from doing the other stuff that needs to be done too.
Yeah. And the reason I ask is because, income is relatively fixed and costs are not, right? So we can't control increase in costs and inflation. Those are well beyond this building, right? But if we could, and I'm assuming you have, right, create a hierarchy of urgent, priority, and routine things, because I think Josh is expressing a concern of people in this community that the costs are increasing at a rate which are becoming very challenging to deal with. And the more that is communicated, the more there might be a desire to cut from the bottom of that list. And then just for the risk to be very clearly articulated, these are the things that must be done and these are the costs. And if you can't do 6, you only do 5 you can't do 7, you only do 5 or 6%, then these routine things that are, we would like to do, but are not urgent are going to be pushed further down the timeline. Right. And that's responding to the sensitivities of the community. Right. And is that something you've already done? And this is the result of that process,
And so you're looking at yes, I would say
Okay.
that's what we've looked at. So if you look at Baldwin Creek, it's got a ductile line, single source to the Indian Lookout subdivision. That's a ticking time bomb.
Right.
And it's got a one-way feed. And so, the fires that we have out there, we just cross our fingers that doesn't cause that line to go while we're having high velocities, go through that area. The highest priorities are water quality, right? We have to meet the state and federal rules on discharge. We have to meet it on, treatment at the water treatment plant. We've got to continue to maintain those two things, number one, for the town to have the services to come into their house and make sure that we're meeting. what's set out in front of us to have a system and operate it appropriately. As we look at other portions, these lines are targeting specific line types that have had lots of issues around them, and they're near failure. So those failures mean, yes, we are digging them up and we're repairing them, but we're trying to get them replaced before they get worse. So you push those projects out further, and we could go down the list of the 9 projects that have been prioritized and their importance at some point during a work session.
Right.
And we can talk about why they're important. And then we can talk about the projects behind them that are important too.
Because I think, we all benefit from your hard work, right? The whole community does. Our role perhaps is to understand the load bearing capacity of the community for these increases, which is what he's expressed. If it's 7 and then another year it's 7 and there's only so much carrying capacity of the community. And we have to balance that against these priorities. And then we have to draw back, curtail some of our aims, and then push our timelines out to balance against the things that Josh has expressed, right? So I believe that you're prioritizing, I have high trust in what you're doing, but I also hear what Josh is saying,
Yeah.
And if we look, 4 years down the line, 5 years down the line at 7% every single year, we're gonna break it. That you can only carry so much load of costs, right? So
I agree. And
yeah.
I think that's the message why Senate File 69 did get looked at this year. That's
Yeah.
why the state is looking at this closer, because they realize they'll price people out of their communities if the communities have to shoulder the entire cost of those projects. So
Yeah.
I'm hopeful there's something coming.
Yeah.
And what we try to do to provide reliefs is find other tax monies that are out there, that are going into some other community that have already been paid or a program. So if we can infuse those in, then you reduce the local cost. So the question is, does that mean you do more or slow the pace? But I wholeheartedly agree. We don't want to price people
Right.
out of our communities. We want to make this affordable, but we want to stay ahead of major issues.
And maybe the last thing for me on this subject is that this is a forever problem that's not going to be resolved, right? We're not going to solve this. We're going to manage this or people are going to manage this over years and decades. It might be helpful, perhaps, to have more than one course of action, a long priority list and maybe a shorter one, and then to clearly articulate the risks associated with taking course of action 2 versus 1, right? It'll cost us less if we take course of action 2. We're going to push our timeline out further. We're going to increase more risk. Do you want to do that? And then have that debate over that. It might be helpful to speak to some of the things that Josh is speaking, to. So just some thoughts on that. But
No,
thank you.
I think that's great. And I know it's a tough position to decide
Yes.
how much to do, how much project to do, and, how much comes from the local pieces. We try to, we've been successful, over 40 million of outside dollars coming in to, the tank project alone, if that 10 million was put on, this rate, it's just trying to do our best to make it affordable for people. And we're not out trying to do anything other than fix the infrastructure that's failing.
Yeah. And 2 thoughts come to mind about that. So one is, it's been a while since we had the water master plan highlighting the pre-1974 pipes and the priority list. I think the whole list was like 40 something like that. So that might be a nice thing to recirculate, both for our knowledge as well as having that available to share with folks who have questions about it. And I'd be remiss not to point out that there's a connection. I know we all hear this about how awful the roads are. And to it'd be foolish to try to improve the streets without doing the underlying infrastructure. We're just going to spend a boatload of money. It's the classic lipstick on a pig. And then we can see how big an effort it is to dig up a street to replace a water line or a sewer line. So we will have spent thousands, tens and tens of thousands of dollars to make the streets look nice and then to rip them up. So there's a next step to this that is also a really challenging part of the conversation, because we hear from our residents all the time, how can we make the roads better? And it's a package deal. So challenge for that. I also want to note, come back to, are there suggestions for our water and sewer rates that folks would suggest as a way of offering some mitigation to our community? We have a 50% discount, 45% and 40. We go up to 150% of federal minimum poverty level. That's to as local as possible for that dollar amount. And but I do like a lot of programs don't go to the 150 level. I think it's really nice that we do, but I want to ask folks, are we comfortable with what we have? And again, can we please do our best when citizens express concerns to call us out? Even though we've tried to get it out, it's on our social media, not everybody's out there looking at it. So I hope we can all agree, let's make sure we bring this forward to anyone who expresses concerns. Good? Okay. All right. Any other questions? We are not voting on adopting this. That will come in June, and the plan is also to have a public hearing for that. So again, the specifically letting our constituents know this is what's happening. We want them to get that explanation and be able to share their public comments before we vote on it.
Mayor, if I could just do a public service announcement while we're here. In our February work session, February 24th of this year, Lance did a remarkable presentation of 10 years, look back on all of
yeah.
our public works and identifying problems that have been identified through numerous studies, the implementation of those studies, the fixes have been successfully implemented, and it includes the map also of how many water and sewer lines were installed prior to 1977. It's a shocking number. It's color coded on the map. So, you know, we council members refresh ourselves, members of the public who are interested can go back to that packet for February 24th. Take a look at the map to understand the extent of the problem of how aging our water distribution and collection system is and what we're trying to fix. And then the boatload of studies and projects implemented that we've been pursuing for the last 10 years to fix public works problems and deficits that the city had accrued over years. So thank you, Mayor.
Yeah. Okay, we move on to item C. So this is follow up to earlier conversation we had that staff brought this before. So this is discussion concerning proposed resolution 1388, City of Lander fee schedule 2026-27, a resolution replacing resolution 1359. So what we see here is response back from our previous discussion about where we wanted things to change. I think the most notable one is changing some of the park things to a flat rate fee for some of the gazebo, Centennial Park, those kinds of things. And then also changing the rodeo ground rental fee for that.
Mayor, may I clarify something here?
Yes.
So this was a non-action discussion for an item that we're not voting on tonight.
Correct.
I'm glad staff clearly took into account the discussion we had at a work session a month, 2 months ago on this. But given the amount of business we have tonight in front of us, I wonder if we could table this discussion until the night that we do vote on it. But it's here to inform the council of the changes that have been incorporated and that we can now take this back out to people to check on them.
I think what slight change on that, I would ask us if you have questions, concerns about that, address that with our city staff so that we have it as a voting item. It can be a quick item. Staff was responsive to our questions. I think they've captured that in the proposed fee schedule and to move on for that. Great point for that. Also want to check in before we start getting into action items. We have been sitting here. Would a short break be beneficial to folks? Because we are only a part through the meeting and we do have some important discussion items coming up. Yes, no, I'm not seeing anybody be like jumping on it. Keep powering through. Okay, great. We will keep powering through then. All right, so we move on to, and actually before I do that, I meant to mention this earlier. So pardon me for a quick announcement. Folks may have heard that a former council member who served, I believe, 2 terms, passed away Sunday. And so this was Linda Barton, who served on city council, I believe, 2 terms. So was a very dedicated individual for that and continued to serve the community in many ways. So for those interested, her celebration of life will be June 7th at the community center that Sunday for that. Okay, so moving on to the first item is untable approval of resolution 1385, a resolution of the governing body of the city of Lander amending resolution 1381 to clarify the question of the 3/4% sales and use tax to establish a 4-year term. Based on our previous conversation, and Adam, we're going to need you and your Robert's rules. We want to table this. So what's the appropriate process? Do we need to vote to untable and then vote to retable? I'm assuming is the appropriate process. Okay. So if someone can make a motion to untable.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Councilmember Cassidy to untable. We'll vote on that. Starting with you, Councilmember Josh Hahn.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Okay,
And before you take the next motion, you'll have to take a motion under B to approve it and then table it. Make a motion to table it.
okay. So the move to untable passed with one no vote from Councilmember Cassidy. Okay, so now to move to approval of resolution 1385, a resolution of the governing body of the city of Lander, amending resolution 1381 to clarify the question of the 3/4% sales and use tax to specifically establish a 4-year term. So we need to move to approve and then move to table. Okay,
So moved, Mayor.
got a
Second.
motion? And moved by Councilmember Stubble, seconded by Councilmember Larson. And now we need someone to make a motion to table, and we need a specific date for this. So this is where I would suggest the June 23rd meeting, so we have a chance for discussion ahead of time about that.
Mayor,
Yep.
can you clarify? I mean, the intent of our discussion here earlier to table this was so that we could have the MOA approved first.
Correct.
And I would just name that we've already approved resolution for this language to go onto the ballot in resolution 1381. What's in front of us tonight is simply a small language amendment about the term of
Yep.
that tax collection, which was implicit in the 1381 we approved in March by majority vote. We're making it explicit on the term length in this amendment today. So
Yep.
I would offer that we already voted by majority vote to say, let's get this on the ballot for voters to decide before we had the MOA agreed upon. And so to say we want to now table this again, what we're tabling is the amendment of a small section of language of term before we have the MOA, actually extends the length, I think, of clarity. It's already on the ballot,
Got
right?
it.
It's already
Got
gonna
it.
be printed at
Yeah.
this point, before the MOA has been approved. So I'm not gonna condone that we did it that way, 2 months ago, but here we are. And so I actually think we're
Yeah.
causing more confusion if we extend a small, essentially typo in a way, right? Small text edit to a resolution that has been approved tonight, and that we still will have the
Got it.
debate on MOA.
Yeah.
It's been noticed now, it's been discussed, and, we will approve it, perhaps with some amendments down the line. So Mayor, I urge that we actually approve this amendment of this text edit tonight, given
Okay.
that the substance of the resolution has been approved by this body already.
Okay, so Adam, this is where I need you and your expertise with Robert's rules. So if we go ahead and vote on it now, the vote passes, fine. If the vote doesn't pass, then what is our process?
If it doesn't pass, then it fails and you have to start over.
So we would bring the same language to a future meeting. for
Correct.
that. Okay, so that seems like a pretty straightforward process to it. So given that, are folks on board with what was just explained?
Yes.
Can you reread that just one more time for clarity, please? What you just said?
I'm not sure what you're asking me to.
Can you just go through that one more time for clarity?
So we have the motion to vote to approve it. If it passes, that addition to the ballot language goes on the ballot. If we choose to bring it to a vote and it does not pass, then we will have to bring this same language forward at a later date. I think I got that. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry, the same amended language?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Mayor, I mean, if I may, we could also attempted a tabling motion, I could be in the minority here and we do successfully table it, but I just wanted to air
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
opinion there that.
So
We're not.
what I understand from Adam, I think it's fairly low risk to vote on it. Folks either agree or they don't. If they don't, it's going to be the same process, the same language
the
that
MOA.
comes forward at a later date. So are folks good with that? So given that, call for the question, Councilmember Larson.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Oh, so a tie vote. I am going to be a yes on that with the motion passing. Again, that's not the MOA. It's inserting the language for the ballot for that. Okay, thank you. Next up, item C, approve resolution 1386, a resolution approving industry representative support for the Patagonia Free Wall Beta Walk Tour event on June 4th, 2026, pursuant to Wyoming Statute 12-5-402, and exempting the parking lot of Wild Iris Mountain Sports located at 166 Main Street, Lander, Wyoming, from the open container provisions of City Ordinance 2-2-12. A mouthful. Can we get a motion to approve? And then Rochelle can fill us in on the details.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Stupel, seconded by Councilmember Cox, and Rochelle, if you can give us the scoop there.
WYO Climbers, in connection with Wild Iris, has planned this event. They would like to serve alcohol into their parking lot, which necessitates an open container approval by this council. In their application, which was in your materials, it just said the Cowfish was donating the beer. That was unclear because Cowfish holds two licenses. They own Lander Brewing Company, and then they own their Sinks retail license. So a retailer doesn't require permission of the council to donate alcohol, but the microbrew does, as long as it was coming before council, because we couldn't get clarification before this needed to be done. I just threw both in for you to consider.
I have a quick question of clarification.
Please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Rochelle. My only question is, it's not their property that they're donating the liquor. Wild Iris is not part of that. Okay, I answered my own question.
Okay.
Because they don't need an open container if it's their property.
They do
In
in the
their
parking lot,
Parking lot, okay,
and they want to hold it into the parking lot.
right. They would need it anyway. It's.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
If they were
yeah.
just staying inside the building, they wouldn't need an open container.
Okay. any
Mayor,
questions?
I'll just mention that this is a really moderate event, honestly. It's the word I'd use here. It's an open container from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. I really appreciate it. It's not 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. Right? And
Yep.
we have approved these kind of applications in the past at this business, which is, I think, a really important Main Street business for Lander as well. And so, I urge a yes vote, and I'm glad to see that it's highly curtailed for the amount of time that will also be an open container. I don't believe, Chief Police, correct me if I'm wrong here, that we've had historic problems, at this site or with events like this. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, call for the questions, starting with you, Councilmember Hahn.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Motion passes. Next up, you've got this fairly hefty wildfire management operating plan. Item D is approve the annual wildland fire management operating plan. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
Move to approve the annual wildland fire management operating.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Cox with a second by Councilmember Dan Hahn. As noted, this comes up every year. This was submitted to us by Chief Sywick. Again, making sure all the parties are in agreement, a more extensive mutual aid agreement, essentially. That. So any questions on this? Okay. Call for the question, starting with you, Councilmember Larson.
Yes.
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 Great, motion passes. Thanks y'all for moving right along. Next up is approve the Wind River Visitor Council FY 2026-2027 budget. Get a motion and approval, and then Ms. Wilson can come up and answer questions about it.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, I'm going to go with Team Hahn there, moved by Councilmember Dan Hahn, seconded by Councilmember Josh Hahn. And thanks for joining us, Ms. Wilson, with this information. Sure. We always like handouts. Oh, yeah. the annual report, awesome.
My name's Helen Wilson, the Wind River Visitors Council. Thank you for having me here. Okay. I'm happy to go over some of the highlights, some of our current projects, or I'm happy just to move on to questions, whatever the council would prefer.
How about, can you give us a quick highlight? The highlight reel would be great. And then, council, be prepared with your questions for Ms. Wilson.
Absolutely. Okay, so from the main budget, the way that we do our budget is we always take the previous full fiscal year's revenue and make it the following year's budget. So that number is 1,061,268, which is up from last year. In addition, we will be receiving $300,000 in Destination Development Program funds. So we've got a very solid budget here. For tourism asset development funds, that's 25% of the lodging tax revenue. Lander this year received 75,422. Next fiscal year, it'll be 78,056. So it is going up. I do want to point out, though, that Lander brought in 30.35% of the lodging tax last year, 29.42% this upcoming fiscal year. So the percentage went down slightly. We are seeing numbers go up in Riverton and Du Bois because of the dude ranches and people coming through the area and staying in Riverton when they fly in late and things like that. So nothing to be concerned about there. The numbers still went up, so it's a really positive thing. Some of the current projects that we are working on or have worked on since I last spoke to this group is we did work with the county to put out an audio tour called the Wind River Country Heritage Quest, a digital discovery. We've worked with the museums as well. We have 15 locations. It's a travel story audio tour, and people can go and visit various locations. And if they visit 5, they receive a sticker. If they visit 12, they get a Fill It Forward water bottle that's logoed with the 250 America sticker. And we also have logoed magnifying glasses for that. One of the really exciting projects we just finished is a complete website rebuild. So it's been a long time since we've done a website rebuild. And this has an AI feature and it has a trip building component. So you can actually go on the site. It's a lot of fun. My parents visited for Memorial Day weekend and I was typing things in and having it form an itinerary and seeing if it would come up with something that I knew that my parents would enjoy, and it did. And you can put in things like my mom's got a walker, and I want to do outdoor activities that somebody can do with a walker and not too far walking, but a little bit of fresh air. And it came up with all kinds of things. So the itinerary, play with it. It's really fun. And if you notice anything, we are still in the period of making adjustments and fixing things up. But it's a solid website. It's been really great having that up. We did that as part of National Travel and Tourism Week, which was May 3rd through 9th. We also launched a community cocktail and mocktail project. And this really was a community effort. I was at an event last year in Phoenix, Arizona, and they were talking about how all of the restaurants and the local organizations were serving a cocktail and mocktail called the Phoenix. And I wanted to see if that was something we could do in our community, where we have something else that defines our community and the people and the stories. And so we put out a request for cocktails and mocktails in the month of March. And we ended up having 3 events, one in Du Bois, one in Lander, and one in Riverton. The events were hosted by the venues themselves. So the Coulter Loft, the Rustic Pine, and Bar 10. And then Wyoming Whiskey helped to sponsor it. And we have 3 final cocktails, which the Wind River Visitors Council Board of Directors will be tasting and voting on Thursday. And then the winning cocktail will be provided at the Wyoming Whiskey booth during Brewfest. And this has just been a really fun thing. And the final three cocktails, they all have stories with them. And one actually looks like a fish if you hold it up to the light, and it's got even the black speckles. And they were saying how it's a fish cocktail. We'll see which one wins. They're all three are very different. Another project we worked on, I know Mayor White mentioned this earlier, was the wayfinding signage. So this is a grant that we get every other year from the Wyoming Office of Tourism, and that's the $300,000 that's written into the budget. The first two rounds of funding helped to support the wayfinding project in Du Bois, Lander, and Riverton. I am thrilled to say that I believe that project was completed on Saturday, just last week. We actually had two signs, one in Lander and one in Riverton that needed moving, and that did happen last weekend. So we believe that project is done in those three communities, but we are expanding the project to both Hudson and Shoshone. And the purpose of this project is to really define each of the communities, but also show that we are one big area so the similar look with the individual personalities is a good way of wording it. We are working on putting together some projects for the next round of funding. Finishing the wayfinding will be the first priority, but I have been talking to people in Lander about possibly helping out with some of completing some of the pathways. Maybe we have a wish list, and that is something that the board of directors of the Winter Visitors Council will be talking about on Thursday. And of course, a lot of the 300,000, it sounds like so much, but then you start diving into these projects and you realize that there's only so much you could do. And one of the things that I had handed out to you is what we're calling the Your Day, Your Adventure pocket guides. This is something that my office is the upstairs of the Lander Chamber of Commerce, and I can hear a lot of the visitors come in and ask the questions. One of the questions I hear all the time is, I'm here for an hour, what can I do? Or I'm here for half a day, what would you suggest? Or I'm here for a whole day. And so we put together these Your Day, Your Adventure pocket guides. They do fit in a back pocket. I tried them with numerous back pockets, and they're not meant to be complete descriptions. They're just meant to inspire. But what they have on the back of them are two QR codes, one that takes you to our new website, which has, of course, the trip itinerary and the AI component, but also it has a link to the community calendar. So this is an easy resource for our visitor centers to be handing out. And we currently have them for Du Bois, Lander, and Riverton. And we had these printed, I think we did something like 300 of each to start with, to see how people would take them, but also to make sure we didn't have any mistakes in them. And now I think we're ready to move forward with several thousand based on how many of them are getting picked up. Something we did this year was a resident sentiment survey. We worked with the University of Wyoming on that, and they did a really nice job. We worked with their research lab, and they came up with all of the rubrics and all of that. Couple of interesting statistics. 87% of people who took the survey were very supportive of tourism in the area. We have seen that with the lodging tax vote, which is always 72% or higher. But one of the things I found interesting, and this is just, piece that I found interesting, is that the people who have lived here longer are more supportive of tourism than the newer residents. So interesting there, but we are using a lot of that data to help with marketing efforts. Of course, we don't want to just bring people here and have them have negative experiences because, they can't get into a restaurant or have the locals get upset. So we're trying to balance this increase in tourism with destination development and also helping to support our local businesses. One thing I did hand out to you is a lodging tax graph. The one you have is actually more current than the one I have here because I just handed them out, but you'll see the numbers at the bottom, and you'll see that this current fiscal year is exceeding lodging tax revenue more than any previous year. And I was saying that last year, and I've said it for a few years, but lodging tax we are seeing more and more people come to the area. I have had the question over the past, and I didn't bring this, but I can email it to anyone who's interested. But I do get the question of what does that have to do with inflation? So we actually created a graph, and it doesn't have much to do with inflation. They're really kind of all over the place with those numbers, but we are following the data. We're looking at all of our occupancy rates and what tourism is doing for our community. You'll see in the annual report, which just came out for 2025, that it was 101.3 million was brought into Fremont County last year, 2025. And these reports, they always come out about this time of year. We don't get the numbers until May. So it always feels very late to me, but this is a brand new report that we just put out maybe a week and a half ago. So you're some of the first people to see it. That's really my presentation. I am happy to answer any questions, and I always appreciate coming and talking to the group and hearing your thoughts.
Great. I've got a comment and a question for you, and then I'm sure others might as well. First, going back to the signs, thank you for the work with some of the very local spots about changing some of the locations. There were concerns about, can it be moved a little bit? And really appreciate your work with the placement company for that.
Well, and I should say that I really appreciate the city working with us on that. I realized that most of the phone calls went to the city and didn't come to the Wind River Visitors Council. So I appreciate the communication, and I'm glad we were able to hopefully fix all of the issues.
Yeah, I think so. The other one, so the Destination Development Program you have listed on line 4 as well as line 73.
Yep. So that is income is on line 4, and then expenditure is on.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
balances out to 0.
Got
I
it.
should say that money, the 300,000, it is every other year. So we do have it as income, but it might not all get spent this year. But the projects are very specific with the Wyoming Office of Tourism. And what we've really tried to do at the Wind River Visitors Council is spend the money on projects that the lodging tax doesn't cover. So infrastructure projects that we wouldn't be allowed to spend the lodging tax on, like the wayfinding signage.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Other questions? Councilmember Larson.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. Ms. Wilson, thank you. I really liked your day.
It's fun.
Your adventure. I was just wondering, is that subsidized any way that, that we're promoting Lander Brewing, Pushroot Brewing, Gannett Grill, Molino's, Cowfish versus some of the other?
That is a great question. And we run into this a lot with influencers and media writers and with the Your Day, Your Adventure. And we try to alternate between businesses and pick the ones that are the experiences that are most familiar. You can't really come to land. You can't bring somebody to Lander and not take them to the Cowfish. But we also try to alternate between locations. And I'm sure with the second version, we will be very careful to make sure that everybody is promoted. But things like the breweries, we tried to include both. But we do run into that issue, when we get a media writer, for example, and it's like, okay, which hotel did we have them at last time? Or, we want to make sure that we aren't we try to be fair to everybody and also every community. With Du Bois, Lander, and Riverton, and every season. Did we promote summer with these influencers last year? If we did, maybe we need to lean on winter or fall or spring. So it's a lot of juggling because we can't do it all, but we do try to be fair to everybody.
Thanks, Ellen.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cassidy.
Thank you for the brief. I was trying to catch you and write down these some of the things you said. You mentioned 101.3 million.
What? Yeah, and
Can you say again what that was?
let me double check that. I handed this out to you, and that number is on page. Yep, it's on page 5 at the top. So Travelers spent 181.3 million in Fremont County in 2025, and the number of jobs that were generated in 2025 was in tourism was 1,540, which is actually 10 less than last year.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Wilson. Always a pleasure to have the transparency of seeing your budget and the remarkable work you and the council do. So I appreciate the boost you give to our economy. On page 7, you have visitor spending by type of traveler accommodation. That's aggregate for the county. Can you, just as a, after this meeting, can you get us that by Lander? I'd like to see how Lander differs from this county look.
I can if we have that data. Some things we have data for breaking down in the communities, but a lot of it we don't.
Okay.
The sample sizes, so we get this information from a report called the Dean Runyon Associates Report, which comes through the Wyoming Office of Tourism.
Okay.
And it's often hard to figure out the specifics for the community because the sample size is so small that they don't report it.
Got it.
I can look and see if I have that. I have a feeling I don't,
Okay.
because otherwise I would have included that type of data. But we have some other data I can look at, and I can see if I can get you some additional Lander numbers, but it is tricky.
That's, Mayor, if I may, thank you. I certainly don't want to have that be an onerous burden on all the good work you do. So if it's easy to hand and accurate and you pull it from existing place, that'd be awesome. If you're trying to compile it and run analysis, please don't. I was assuming that, oh, this was maybe, you had it by place and you added it up into aggregate yourself. If that's not true.
What I can provide you is the lodging tax that came in specifically for Lander. And that's not pretty in the annual report, but I can provide, and it includes all of the campsites and the hotels and the Airbnbs and your short-term vacation rentals. But I can provide that, and you can see the difference. And that's where I get that 29%. It's just a breakdown of that. And that is Lander specific. That is not county properties. So it's inside the city of Lander.
Perfect. That'll work. Thank you. No rush on that.
Yep. Other comments or questions? Ms. Wilson? Yeah, thanks. I think it seems like you've provided a little more detailed about the overnight visitor volume, length of stay. So thanks for getting a little more granular on that. Helpful to have. Yeah, tourism drives our economy quite a bit for that.
Going to be a busy summer. And one other thing I should mention is that I do a monthly conference call with all of the other lodging tax boards in the state. There's 27 of us, and everybody else is seeing their numbers go down, and we are seeing our numbers go up. So I think that's a really positive thing for our area.
Good to know. Great. Any other questions? So given that, can we call for the question for approving the Visitors Council budget? And Councilmember Larson, we'll start with you.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Thanks for coming and sharing this information with us. Okay. Last up, section 5, our unfinished business, which are action items. So first we need to have a motion for A, untable, approval of the third and final reading of ordinance 2025-13, repealing City of Lander Municipal Code Title II, sale, licensing, and use of alcoholic and malt beverages, section 211 through 251 in its entirety, and replacing it with Title II, sale, licensing, and use of alcoholic and malt beverages, sections 211 through 261.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Councilmember Larson, seconded by Councilmember Cox. I don't think there's any call for discussion on this one, so call for the question, starting with you, Councilmember Hahn.
No.
Yes.
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 Okay, motion passes to untable. And so moving on is item B, approval of the third and final reading of ordinance 2025-13, repealing City of Lander Municipal Code Title II, sale, licensing, and use of alcoholic and malt beverages, sections 211 through 251 in its entirety, and replacing it with Title II, sale, licensing, and use of alcoholic and malt beverages, sections 211 through 261. Can I get a motion and a second for that, please?
So Mayor, I'll move to approve this with the caveat that I'm going to then move to amend it.
Correct.
Significantly.
Yes.
So I move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Can we get a second? Thank you. So now, yes, we'll go into some discussion. So added here, I think everyone got a colored version. So our apologies. Essentially what's in front of you is what was discussed the last time we had this conversation. In, in order to do this cleanly, transparently, we will go item by item of what was discussed last time. Councilmember Steele and I met this afternoon about that process. So I'm going to turn it over to her to lead us through the process of making the amendment. So we'll have a series of amendments, vote on each amendment, another amendment, and then as the whole.
Thank you,
So with
Mayor.
that, turn it over to you.
Thank you. Let me name first too, what went into the packet, for, approval at third reading here. Looked and was in fact the last approved voted upon version, which was second reading. And so that might have caused confusion, consternation, and our apologies that folks who came to the May 12th meeting where we discussed proposed amendments, you didn't see that because we didn't vote on those proposed amendments. That's what's happening tonight. So you saw a version that was the last approved voted upon version, as per like protocol for an elected body like this, a governing body. We could have made that more clear perhaps. That didn't mean we were reverting to that in any way. Tonight is the night where we'll bring amendments that we vetted through discussion and debate on May 12th forward to that February document. And then if it goes forward, we'll vote on third and final reading and have baked this. So let me just say again, before we jump into 7 amendments, I think I'll bring, and the council members might have others as well. That what a remarkable triumph of input and engagement and patience from business owners, from stakeholders, from people who care about how we sell and distribute alcohol in town, how we take care of community welfare and safety. Like, thank you to everybody who showed up constantly, showed up with ideas, and helped us get this into a place I think that is right-sized, I hope, and that achieves, dual goals of community welfare and safety. And adds a layer of a different accountability that we have had in the past, as well as due process that's deeply detailed and for how the council may take action in the future if we were to about a license holder. So thank you is what I'll just keep saying to those who've showed up and shared their input. And so Mayor and Council, what I'll bring reflects substantial ideas, concepts, changes that we discussed on May 12th, and then some grammatical, typo changes just to make sure this is clean enough by third reading. So I'll go about them in page order here, I hope. So if we'll go to page 2 of the paper document, the first amendment I have here, if you see the text in red, that was approved in second reading. But you'll see the last sentence in red there is actually like an odd kind of minutes. I don't know how that got included, but we should take out the sentence that begins seconded by Councilmember Jehan, council members voting yay. So Mayor, I move that we amend on page 2, the sentence that states seconded by Councilmember Jehan, council members voting yay, Larson, Cassidy, Dehan, Cox, Stubble, and Jehan, motion passed. That's simply a procedural note that documents how we, second reading, approved the sentence preceding it.
Great. So we have a motion. Can we get a second?
Second.
Sorry, who's Councilmember Larson? Great. Can we call for the question? Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
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 Great. That amendment passes.
Sorry
On to
for
the next.
that messiness. So then, council folks following along, if we can go to page 3. And what I'm going to move is that we delete entirely subsection U. So this is in definitions. The definition is for unauthorized gambling. And this is in a coming section, as we discussed, a violation we're now removing. We're not going to have as a violation of this ordinance any longer. So here's where we delete the definition. The deletion of unauthorized gambling violations will occur later in the document. So Mayor, I move that on page 3, we delete entirely subsection 2.1.2U, unauthorized gambling.
Great. We've got a amendment moved. Can I get a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Stubble, seconded by Councilmember Han. A note, if folks have not seen that the state is looking at significant restrictions in what they consider charitable gambling. So anyone who has that in their business, please be paying attention to that. But call for the question, Councilmember Han.
Yes.
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 Great. That amendment passes. And then following, there will be renumbering. Because one of the things you will address. Lettering.
Thank you, Mayor. If we go on to page 7. This is now section 2.1.4, and I want to address subsection H. I'm sorry, large B, little h. So it's the timeline for completion of alcohol server training. Top of the
Got it.
page, page
Got it.
7.
Yes.
Page 7.
Yep. Page 7 in the green.
Yep. And again, I'm sorry if I didn't make this clear by page numbers. I'm looking at the documents printed for council. I think we had copies distributed. And these are the proposed amendments from Councilman Hahn, Cassidy, and myself that we discussed 12th. So if you're looking at
Yeah.
the second reading version in the packet, those numbers, they're going to be different and you won't see these changes proposed. Okay. So we're okay on page 7 here? All right. So this reflects quite a bit of change, a nice, input of incorporation of input. When we first proposed this in ordinance, we had 30 days for completion of alcohol server training course. I think on first reading, we amended it to 90. And I think after substantial discussion, I'd like to propose that we amend this from 90 to 60 and add the language here in green and renewed every 2 years of employment. So in entirety, H would read completion of an approved alcohol server training course by server employees within 60 business days of hire and renewed every 2 years of employment. And Mayor, that's what I would move as the amendment.
Okay, we got an amendment. Is there a second?
I'm sorry, can you read that one more time? We were chasing pages.
No, I apologize.
Sorry.
And I'm probably going too fast. So I'm moving that we change 90 to 60 business days and add the language and renewed every 2 years of employment. It should be in green is the proposed change. So then in entirety, subsection H would say completion of an approved alcohol server training course by server employees within 60 business days of hire and renewed every 2 years of employment.
Okay.
So
Okay.
a quick question of clarification, or maybe, I just have a question. Who's going to track date of hire to the 60-day requirement? Is that an accountability piece that's not attainable? Meaning, if Mr. Dees hires somebody, are we going to go back and say, Melinda was hired on this date and didn't get trained on this date? Are we tracking that, or is that something that's really not attainable? We want them to do it, but mandating the timeline, is that something that we're going to be policing or governing?
Great question. My interpretation of that would be if there were issues from that particular server, at that point, it would be asking when your employee hired, they have that documentation. And likewise, they would have documentation of when they completed the alcohol server training. So not requiring that to be proactively done, but in response to an incident.
So then I would amend that we say in H, completion of an approved alcohol server training course, and strike the rest.
Mayor,
We
if I-
have to vote on the first amendment, right?
and it doesn't have a second yet, but then you can
Yeah.
offer a friendly amendment to that if you'd like.
So
So I need a second though.
I would propose, I just thought of that, like, we are not governing how they hire, who they hire, when they hire, what date they hire. I mean, I'm sure I could probably say they don't want to. In the event that there's an issue, there will be an issue anyway, if they've not received the server training. So I think that we could just state that they have a completion of the approved server training.
Yeah, I think my interpretation of the intent behind this was because servers are really the frontline risk managers of this, that we wanted to encourage those folks getting the training. So trying to put some kind of timeline without it being onerous on it for that.
Yeah,
So-
I understand the intent. I just don't think that there's an accountability piece that means if you're not going to manage that or govern that, you probably shouldn't have it in there.
Got it. Fine. So. Councilmember Stubble, since this is your amendment, do you accept that as a friendly amendment or?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilman Cox. I'm looking at, the way, because you're right, we're not tracking, we're not asking for dates of hire or training dates. The violation is just states failure to provide approved alcohol server training to each server. We would find that out, not because we're gonna be auditing records or going in and quizzing people. We'd find that out if there was another violation, and we'd ask if that server training had provided. So at that point, it's yes or no, it's been provided or not. I'm a little hesitant because we've run this language and gotten a lot of input with business owners. So I'm inclined to stay with what I've gotten thumbs up on from business owners and not make a significant change at this point where we're not getting put on it. But I hear your intent as well.
Yeah.
Before I decide on if I'm going to accept that as a friendly amendment, Mayor, I think I'd like to hear other council people's
Sure.
input.
Yeah, other folks, thoughts on this? Councilmember Cassidy.
Your observation is compelling, for sure. You know, if you can't track it, if you can't enforce it, do we achieve the aim in the simplest approach possible? And the violation says, if I'm, from memory, it says, do you or do you not have? It doesn't say have you or have you not in 2 years or X number of days, right? So maybe to keep it simple, that might be a better approach.
And I hear your concern too. Oh, thank you, Mayor. I hear your concern too, Councilman Stubble, but when it's less restrictive, I would imagine business owners wouldn't be as, I mean, we're not, you know what I mean? We're not making it more restrictive, so
Yeah.
I get it.
It's another one of those, I see both sides of that coin. So having some kind of framework that's perhaps more than aspirational, but again, we're not going to be going with a checklist for businesses. But I'm thinking about the other side of that. An employee's been on the job. They were hired June 1. It's now August 30th. There's an issue that occurs. And then again, the point of all of this was trying to provide some clarity for what we're trying to achieve. And that brings up the question of like, well, we were about to do that. Like it was scheduled for next Monday. And where do we go with that? Like it doesn't give, yeah, I see both sides of that coin.
Same. Mayor, if may I offer, I think, a new piece of information to debate. So let's check into where we are in the document. So this subsection H is under term renewal and expiration of licenses. It's part of a list of A through I that are check-ins at the license renewal process, right? So, right, here's how the licenses shall expire. It says we will renew them. And then here's this list of things we're considering: number, type of existing license, permits, desires of the residents, right? Standard language from statute. And then here it is: completion of approved alcohol server training course. So really the question there is, at renewal, the clerk, we added this language, I assume, would be asking, show us documentation of completed server training. And that's part of our consideration at renewal. So in that case.
So are you imagining it as simple
the
as a
tracking
list of
mechanism.
here are our current
Yeah.
employees
Mhm.
who are servers,
Mhm.
and here's the date of their alcohol server.
Or I
training.
even frankly just that I validate they've been trained. I mean,
simpler
it's yeah.
that all servers have
Yeah.
received.
So that is the tracking
Okay.
mechanism, Councilman Cox, to your point of how would we know? It's in this list of renewal considerations that we would ask.
And they provide that list to us now,
They do not, because this is a new addition to our ordinance of alcohol
that they
serving
would have,
trades.
they would have to provide that.
Well, that we are mandating completion of alcohol server training. We don't have that right now in our ordinance. Clerk Fontaine, do you believe that is a feasible element of renewal, having that documentation or?
Well, as council and I were just listening to this conversation, I'm not clear what the intent is here, to be honest. Like when a license goes to renew, are you requesting then that the clerk or the deputy clerk say, provide me a list of all your employees that have been provided this training? Or are you asking, because you said proof of training, and that's very different than a list. Fair.
There's a renewal application, right?
That's provided by the state, but it does not cover this topic. So that would be an additional component that my deputy and I would institute.
Right.
I want to know what the expectation is.
Got it. So again, that goes to the question of, do you want to list more formal of a list of each current employee, or simply a statement signed by the license holder that all of my servers have received? alcohol server training.
Mayor, my interest is in the latter.
I have absolutely no interest in a list of employees.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
I want to have a
okay.
statement
Don't-
certified,
Yeah.
provided alcohol
Right,
service
for all,
training.
all
Yep.
kinds of reasons, right?
Yep.
Just keeping it
Yep.
simple, keeping it easy. We don't need all of that in public documentation, et cetera.
Got it.
So,
In this case, then Mayor, I would withdraw my proposed amendment and following the intent of Councilwoman Cox's suggestion. Look at H, and I would move that we amend it by ending the sentence at employees. So completion of an approved alcohol server training course by server employees. No time frame, no renewal.
okay,
The business owner at the time of renewal says, I certify that my employees have received alcohol server training.
I would second that.
okay, great. Is that a formal second?
I second that.
Okay. So moved by Councilmember Stubble with a second by Councilmember Cox. Any further discussion on that? Can we call for the question? Councilmember Larson.
Yes.
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 Great. Awesome. That passes. Good wordsmithing, folks.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Let's see, Mayor, then if we and council can go on to page 9. This is where there's going to be very substantial change to the document. And again, ideas, concepts we have fully vetted May 12th and with
Yep.
extensive outreach and conversation with others. So what I'm going to propose here is that we replace the entire section 2.3.1 with what you see here, a variety of track changes that were proposed by Councilman Cassidy, Councilman Hahn, and I, and then discussed on the 12th. So I don't want to run through every piece of red text, but it's a replacement of the entire 2.3.1 with what you see in our proposed changes. This then, just to say out loud, takes out points, simplifies the number of violations, provides specificity about violations in accordance with, I think, really excellent public comment. The number of violations is what we're tracking. There are fines assessed. The actions prompted are hopefully clear. And so that's my summary of the change again. We discussed extensively, and I will do that after.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
So I move that we delete section 2.3.1 from the second reading text that was approved in 2.3.1 and replace it entirely with these proposed changes from the Cassidy Hahn Stubble document.
Okay, we have a motion. Can we get a second?
Second.
So moved by Councilmember Stubble, seconded by Councilmember Cassidy. There is one point here that's coming next for clarification, but as it stands, had extensive conversation. I think we can call for the question. Starting Councilmember Hahn.
Yes.
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 No.
Mayor, staying on
Okay.
page 9, then in the text we just adopted, you'll see that there's a highlighted Wyoming State statute in subsection B, so 2.3.1 B now, that where the statute wasn't enumerated. That's, sorry, my mistake. I should have looked that up earlier and I didn't. So I propose we amend to add that statute citation. So again, it's 12. Yep. And just make sure you're with me. Again, this is subsection B, second paragraph, starting the accrual of 5 violations within a calendar year. You go to the end of that paragraph, missing a citation. Everybody with me? Okay, so I move that we add the citation, which is Wyoming Statute 12-7-101 et sec, ET-SEQ for the lawyer language.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Stubble. Can we get a second on that?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Larson. Call for the question. Councilmember Larson.
Yes.
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 Great. Another change that we didn't have in our proposed text on the 12th, here on page 10. So we're still in section 2.3.1. On the 12th, we discussed and verbalized to council that we didn't want the documentation and accrual of violations to be calendar year, but rather to be licensed term. So I'm bringing that amendment now. So delete in a calendar year, which is January 1st to December 31st, and replace that with within the license term.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Stubble, seconded by Councilmember Han. Call for the question. Councilmember Larson.
Yes.
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 Motion passes.
And mayor and council, then I would go on to, I think this is the last one. I always say that it's not, but I think this one is, for me at least, knowing that others might have amendments. Page 11. No, I'm sorry, page 10 still. This is section 2.3.2, hearings, enforcement, suspension, revocation, and appeals.
Oh, moving. Yep, points.
And here, this language 2.3.2 in front of you actually was created by our legal counsel and brought forward, gosh, Adam, I forget, in April, in May, March. Thank you. Yeah. With the intent of adding a great deal of specificity, clarity, very clear outline of steps and processes, both by ourselves, staff, and for business owners, if we were to take enforcement actions. And
Yeah.
so
Clarifying the due process.
exactly, and making it, again, no one is, ideally no surprises of what happens next, nothing opaque. It's here, you know, in the very unfortunate circumstance we're in this scenario, all parties involved can see the steps outlined that we would take. So, and then what you see in track changes is because that was created by our legal counsel prior to the deletion of the points. You'll see that I've track changed through where points are referenced because they are no longer, where the amendment was passed, part of this. So I move, Mayor, that we delete section 2.3.2 in its entirety from the second reading version and replace it with the 2.3.2 from the proposed amendments brought by Councilman Cassidy, Han, and myself. And the text.
Okay. Yep. Great. We got a motion. Can we get a second?
Second.
So moved by Councilmember Stubble, seconded by Councilmember Cassidy. Thanks. There are a number of places where that's deleted. And again, this is really one of the most important parts of it, that prior to having this kind of structure was an arbitrary process. Adam, I'm going to say it, arbitrary and capricious, both in there. So this I think is especially important for our license holders. So given that, call for the question, starting with Councilmember Han.
Yes.
Yes, sorry.
Yes.
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 Great. That also passes.
So Mayor, then those are the amendments I had listed to voice, and I want to acknowledge there might be
Yeah.
more amendments when we do our final vote from other council, but I do want to say while I voiced those amendments, I was not responsible for the creation of that. That was a team effort, both from council input, certainly again, from many people who engaged with us, and then Councilman Cassidy and Councilman Han. Thank you so much for working out a lot of that substance together, and thank you for letting me voice it, but I don't want it to be attributed to me in any way. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, now we need to vote on the document as a whole with all the amendments. We need a motion and a second for that. Oh, actually, we did already. So
Motion to
now,
approve as amended.
yeah, motion to approve as amended. Okay,
Second.
call for the question, starting with you, Councilmember Larson.
Yes.
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 Okay. I feel like we should have some kind of symbolic toast or something that we we got it.
I don't know. I mean,
It's a robust process.
I think it would be nice in a year to know
Let's check in.
what the numbers are.
Yep. Yeah.
As it relates to what we've adopted today,
Yeah.
before we do any celebrating.
Well, I mean, I think the process is worthy of that, the community involvement, the thoughtful conversations. You know, from the get-go, it was a question of, we want to do this right, and whatever time it takes is whatever time it takes for that. Council, before we adjourn, which I know folks are excited to do, and again, thank you to all of you as well as our members for hanging in for a relatively long meeting. It turns out that unfortunately, most likely both myself and Councilmember Stubble are going to be absent for the June 9th meeting, or attending by Zoom. For me, I'm not sure if you, yeah. So my hope is to keep that to a minimal meeting for that. Trying to orchestrate a meeting via Zoom is not great. There are still points of conversation and other things to talk about. So would you also be available for a June 16th, adding that Tuesday meeting in? So some of the things that would be on June 9th will postpone to June 16th. I'm seeing. Oh, both. And is attending via Zoom possible or no for you? Okay, okay. Okay. Oh, yeah. I don't want you getting up at, 2 a.m. to attend a council meeting. That sounds bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are big boys and girls. You can handle it.
Mayor.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Mayor, before you break, I just have a question, just some clarification. Now that you voted it through, it goes into effect July 1st, is that correct?
It
Or at the
goes
renewal?
into this is to Rochelle because it's about when it gets published, in the paper. So-
Absent the ordinance having a specific effective date, it will go in as soon as it's published. I have to publish, which could happen in Saturdays, but the final ordinance publication would be their Saturday or Wednesday, depending on their deadline.
And then it would take effect immediately, is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
About the last publication.
Yeah. Thanks for asking that. Okay. So in terms of 16th, Councilmember Cassidy, Councilmember Hahn, Councilmember Cox, are you available for that? Okay. Great. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Hopefully you are. Okay. So please make that placeholder in your calendars for that. That'll be an additional meeting. And now we do actually need a motion to adjourn before we call it quits for the night.
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Councilmember Hahn, Dan Hahn, moved by seconded by Councilmember Cassidy. Call for the question, Councilmember Hahn.
Yes.
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 That passes. And again, thank you all. That amazing what happened tonight and leading up to it. Yeah, yeah. Oh, of course. One of these. Want a biggie? Or oh wait, here's a littler one. Yeah. Or there's actually that one. Yeah. Yeah.
At 5:30.